Chapter 661. Now that things had come to this, it was already a foregone conclusion. It was impossible for Tang Jing to hide it. Sure enough, the smile in Li Xiaotian's sparkling eyes became more and more intense as he said, "So that's how it is. I was wondering why you guys would travel so far and cross the ocean to Island Nation. So it turns out that Wu Junshan and his wife have both gone missing. Ha, this is big news." Marshall was slightly startled as he looked at her suspiciously. Could it be that she did not know about this matter? She turned her head to look at Tang Jing. Tang Jing faintly sighed and explained, "She came to Island Nation for another matter." Marshall said in disbelief, "How could that be? Didn't she go to the Imperial Palace? Isn't it just colluding with the Island Nation's royal family and harming master and mistress?" "Marshall, you guessed wrong. I don't even know where your master and the others are, so how could I harm him? Moreover, he is a martial artist of the great master realm. What ability do I have to harm him?" Li Xiaotian asked with a smile. Marshall coldly snorted and said, "Of course you are not master's match by yourself. You are full of tricks, and Grandma Li is vicious and merciless. If you join forces with the Island Nation's royal family, it might not be impossible for you to do this. In short, I won't believe your words." Li Xiaotian spread out his hands and said helplessly, "If you don't tell me the details, I can't do anything about it. Tang Jing, I've already told you the truth. It's up to you to believe it or not." Tang Jing's expression kept changing. Marshall and Li Xiaotian both looked at him at the same time. After a while, Tang Jing gritted his teeth and said, "Whether I believe you or not, the most important thing right now is that I must go with you to the Imperial Palace. I've already promised you, so of course there's no problem." Li Xiaotian smiled charmingly and agreed. Hearing this, Marshall quickly asked, "You guys are going to the Imperial Palace?" "The Imperial Palace is heavily guarded, so she can enter and leave freely. In order to hide her identity, she must sneak in to find out more information," Tang Jing explained. Marshall took a deep look at Li Xiaotian. The smile on her face did not disappear, making it hard to figure out. But for his master and mistress, he could only compromise temporarily in order to sneak into the Imperial Palace. "I'll go with you," Marshall said. Tang Jing was about to nod his head, but Li was the first time and refused. "That won't do, the Imperial Palace is heavily guarded. I was the only one was I allowed to enter. You guys must have seen the people by my side. They are the people of the Imperial Palace is to protect me, but they are to guard is to monitor me. I will be in the Imperial Palace is the Imperial Palace is Imperial Palace. Are you trying to trick me?" Wu immediately said. Li Xiaotian did not mind and said, "I know you won't believe me. As for whether it is a trick or not, that will be up to you guys to decide. In any case, I can only bring one person in. You guys can discuss among yourselves." Tang Jing did not expect such a result and asked, "Is there really no other way?" Li Xiaotian firmly shook his head. The two of them looked at each other, both of them wanting to enter the Imperial Palace and investigate. But what would happen after entering, what kind of danger they would encounter, they were unable to predict. "Marshall, wait for me outside, I will go in." Tang Jing thought for a while and made a decision. How could he let Marshall do the work of entering the tiger's den? His cultivation was higher, so even if he encountered danger, he would have the power to protect himself or even escape. Marshall Zhuozhuo looked at Tang Jing, and finally nodded after a long time. She had also guessed Tang Jing's thoughts, and this was the best choice. But she was still not reconciled. Hatefully glaring at Li Xiaotian, she said, "You have ulterior motives, you want to separate us and defeat us one by one. Don't be an idiot, we won't give in that easily." Li Xiaotian laughed and said, "Whether or not I have ulterior motives, you will know the answer tomorrow. Then we will take our leave, I will come find you tomorrow morning." Tang Jing prepared to leave. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? We haven't talked enough, the two of you are busy people, this kind of long talk is rare. Forget it. Tang Jing waved his hand. Li Xiaotian said disappointedly, all right then, I will wait for you at the villa tomorrow morning. Tang Zhang and Marshall quietly left the villa. I don't believe her. In the night, Marshall said resolutely. Why? The Marshall Organization and the Li Palace are both mysterious organizations in the world. It is precisely because we understand each other that I will not believe her. The people of the Li Palace have always been meticulous and cunning, deceiving people is a common occurrence, and they are the best at playing people in the palm of their hands. Li Xiaotian is the holy maiden of the Li Palace, and is even more proficient in this field, she is an expert. Marshall analyzed. Tang Jing seemed to be deep in thought, he couldn't help but recall the first time he met Li Xiaotian. At that time, he and Fang Shishir were riding the train to southern Yunnan, and the two of them just happened to be next to each other. Because of her few words, Tang Jing almost suffered a great loss at the hands of the cold-faced killer and the police. That scene was still fresh in his mind. Wasn't this just playing with people in the palm of their hands? Later on, the two of them experienced many trials and tribulations, but in the end, there was still a huge gap between them, and they did not trust each other very much. Especially after knowing the secret of the Buzhou mountain, Li Xiaotian even had the intention to kill Tang Jing, and together with the 12 Palace's assassins tried to assassinate him in the capital. If not for Yi Dingdang risking her life to save him, he was afraid that he would have already met with misfortune. Therefore, the two of them were actually mortal enemies, and to the words of the enemy, one must indeed selectively believe. Tomorrow I will go to the Imperial Palace, you stay outside to provide support. If you find anything wrong, immediately leave the island nation. Tang Jing solemnly instructed. No. Marshall stubbornly raised his neck, you are alone in the tiger's den, how can I stay out of it? If I find that you are in danger, I will definitely not hesitate to rush in to save you. Tang Jing shook his head and advised, if I can't escape, then you are walking into a trap. This is an unnecessary sacrifice. I am willing. Marshall blurted out. Tang Zheng was stunned, and Marshall also immediately realized what she had said, and hurriedly lowered her head. She was about the same height as Tang Jing, so even if she lowered her head, her expression was clearly seen by Tang Jing, and the bashfulness on her face was completely revealed. Tang Jing shook his head, and it was rare to see such an expression on her face. Although it was only a hint of bashfulness, it was even more attractive than Li Xiaotian's naked body. A warm current flowed through Tang Zheng's heart, and he could not help but hold Marshall's hand. Marshall's body slightly stiffened, but she did not struggle. She had already promised to be Tang Zheng's person, so she would not resist his actions. Be good, be obedient, with me here, everything will be fine. Believe me, they can't kill me, so if you find out that something is wrong, you must immediately leave. I will come find you in the future, remember. Tang Zheng's voice suddenly became very gentle, he had never used such a tone to speak to Marshall before. For a moment, Marshall stood in place, not knowing what to do as he nodded his head. This gentleness hit her hard in the heart. She had never thought that she would enjoy this kind of gentleness, no different from an ordinary little girl. A single sentence caused her to panic, and she subconsciously agreed to Tang Jing. As the sky turned white, Tang Jing arrived outside the villa alone under Marshall's gaze. The villa in the morning was exceptionally quiet, as if he had just woken up from his sleep. Hello, are you Miss Li's friend? A person walked over and asked. Tang Jing nodded. This way, please. Miss Li has been waiting for a long time. After walking through a bluestone path, Tang Jing was brought to a garden. The ground was covered with a thin layer of cherry blossom petals. In the garden, cherry blossoms were the most beautiful, and they were exceptionally beautiful. Cherry blossoms were the national flowers of the island nation. Ever since he entered the island nation, Tang Jing had seen a lot of them, but the cherry blossoms in this garden were still as beautiful as ever. Li Xiaotian stood under the cherry blossom tree. The petals drifted down and landed on her head and shoulders like decorations, weakening her cold aura and adding a sense of tranquility and beauty. Hearing the sound of footsteps, Li Xiaotian turned around, smiled at Tang Jing, and said, "You're here." Tang Jing nodded his head without batting an eyelid. "Miss Li, can we set off now?" the attendant asked respectfully. "Let's go." The attendant led the way in front, while Tang Jing and Li Xiaotian were a few steps behind. Li Xiaotian asked in a low voice, "Did you sleep well last night?" "Not bad." With a beauty accompanying you, it must be a great enjoyment in life." Li Xiaotian intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Tang Jing's lower body and said. This extremely invasive gaze made Tang Jing slightly embarrassed. He simply remained silent and did not say a word. Li Xiaotian seemed to have seen through his thoughts and changed the topic. "Your identity to the outside world is my fellow disciple. You specialize in the art of apricot woods, especially in the area of difficult and complicated diseases. Perhaps the other side will let you personally examine him. You are the master of the king of medicine, so this shouldn't be a problem for you, right? Don't you have a way to save him? What else do you need me to examine?" Tang Jing asked back. Li Xiaotian smiled but did not say a word. Seeing that she was pretending to be mysterious, Tang Jing did not ask any more questions. "In any case, whatever I tell you to do, just do it. You deliberately wanted to sneak into the imperial palace, so you must suspect that the disappearance of Wu Junshan and the others is related to the island nation's imperial family. When the time comes, I will help you indirectly investigate." However, a few days ago, the island nation's warship sank. The entire country was greatly shaken by this matter, especially the imperial family, so in a moment, don't do anything too out of line and cause more trouble. Li Xiaotian warned. Tang Jing did not comment. Island nation is really unlucky. In the sea, the warship also sank. As for what exactly happened, outsiders have no way of knowing. It is said that at that time, everyone was buried in the sea. Moreover, the investigation of the warship is highly confidential. The Li Palace does not have the ability to gather information from overseas, so they still do not know what exactly happened. Li Xiaotian said to himself. They have done too many bad things. Perhaps this is their punishment. Tang Jing said vaguely. To make a warship sink without a sound is not something an ordinary person can do. Moreover, there has been no military activity in that area of the sea recently. The neighboring countries have all firmly denied that they have anything to do with the sinking of the ship, so this matter is becoming more and more confusing. Li Xiaotian said as his brows furrowed. It was clear that he was also interested in this matter. Tang Jing lowered his head and pretended that he did not hear anything. Chapter 662. The imperial palace was still tightly guarded, but this time, Tang Jing went straight in, because he was accompanied by Li Xiaotian. After passing through the guards, they entered the true interior of the imperial palace. This was the center of the imperial power of the island nation, representing the inheritance and power of this country for thousands of years. There were many ancient buildings with carved beams and painted rafters, and there were many traces of the ancient buildings of Huaxia. This was the imitation of Huaxia back then. Back then, the Huaxia was the center of power in the world, the most powerful country. However, because the cultivators were expelled and gradually walked down the altar, and after experiencing the torment of the invasion war, they became what they were now. Back then, the island nation was a vassal state of Huaxia, paying tribute every year and sending envoys to learn the culture and technology of Huaxia. But now, the island nation no longer put Huaxia in their eyes. This was a sad thing. Tang Jing had mixed feelings. He followed the crowd through the layers of buildings without saying a word, and arrived in front of a magnificent palace. This palace was one size smaller than the palace in Huaxia's imperial city. It was one grade lower, but one could still see its grandeur and magnificence. In front of the palace, the guards had become even tighter. With a combination of light and darkness, Tang Zheng's consciousness moved slightly, and discovered that there were many people hiding in the shadows, silently watching him. Although Li Xiaotian was treated as a guest of honor, this group of island nation people obviously did not completely believe her. This was in line with Li Xiaotian's description. Suddenly, Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian were stopped, and Tang Zheng squinted his eyes. Li Xiaotian's expression did not change as he said, "Don't worry, they are just checking if there are any weapons. You don't have to worry about that." Li Xiaotian knew that Tang Zheng had a sumra bag, and there were too many divine weapons inside. The heaven-shocking bow and shooting sun arrows that she had coveted for a long time were one of them. The characteristics of the sumra pouch were special. Island nation people could not detect it at all. Sure enough, after the island nation people checked, they bowed deeply to the two of them and respectfully let them pass. "Yesterday, I did not come to this palace. Since I am here today, I will definitely be able to see the emperor," Li Xiaotian said in a low voice. Tang Zheng nodded, thinking that it would be for the best. In fact, he had not completely thought of a countermeasure for what he should do this time. The matter of the warship attacking the island was an order from the royal family, so it was difficult for the emperor to absolve himself from the blame. Perhaps only he knew what was going on. Even if Wu Junshan and the others were captured, he should know where they were being held. Therefore, this act of entering the tiger's den alone was a last resort, but a very necessary method. Although the island country was a small country, the country was too small, and the development of these years was seriously lagging behind, but the other party was after all a country, and with the strength of a single person against the strength of a country, even if Tang Zheng was arrogant, he would not be crazy enough to think that he could do whatever he wanted. Without a doubt, if they captured the Sky Emperor alive, everything would be revealed. However, under these heavy guards, it was still unknown whether they would succeed or not. If they were to alert the enemy, it would be even more difficult to find out the whereabouts of Wu Junshan and the others from the royal family in the future. In short, he was caught in a dilemma. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. I will act according to the situation, Tang Zheng silently thought in his heart. Li Xiaotian looked at him meaningfully and asked, "What are you thinking about?" "Nothing." Tang Zheng was shocked. There was still this black-bellied woman beside him. She was very good at reading people's expressions. If there was anything strange about his every move, she would be able to sense it. Even if he were to make a move later, he could not let her discover it in advance, otherwise, as long as she shouted, all his previous efforts would be for naught. Li Xiaotian heard the answer, laughed, and did not say anything more. The majestic aura in the palace was even stronger. If an ordinary person were to walk into this palace, they would probably be unable to help but tremble in fear. They would unconsciously feel guilty and lower their posture. However, Tang Zheng did not feel anything strange. The dragon might of the five-clawed golden dragon was many times stronger than this aura. He could already talk and laugh when facing the five-clawed golden dragon, so why would he be afraid of this palace? Moreover, his body also contained the might of a dragon. If he did not intentionally restrain it and let it out, it would definitely cause many people to tremble in fear. Inside the palace, the number of guards in the open had decreased by a lot, but Tang Zheng could clearly feel that the number of guards in the dark had increased. Furthermore, their strength had increased, and he could feel a few powerful auras faintly discernible. If not for his extraordinary perception, he probably would not have discovered the experts in the dark. This imperial palace was indeed a dragon's pool and tiger's den. The defense of the entire country could not be underestimated. Looking up, there was a middle-aged man sitting on the throne of the palace. This person was not tall, but there was a dignified aura between his brows. With a single glance, one could tell that he was not an ordinary person. Could this person be the heavenly emperor? Tang Zheng could not help but take a few more glances. Suddenly, his gaze turned and landed on the throne beneath the other party. The throne's shape was very unique. Pieces of scales wrapped around the throne, and it was as black as ink. However, the strangest thing was the shape of the throne. 9 ferocious dragon heads stretched out in all directions, giving off a strong sense of oppression and fear. Tang Zheng had seen a true dragon before. The 5-clawed golden dragon did not give off a ferocious feeling. Instead, it gave off a brilliant sense of majesty. However, these 9 dragon heads were completely different. In addition to the sense of majesty, they gave off an even more ferocious feeling, giving off a very uncomfortable feeling. This was very different from the design of Hua Xia's dragon throne. For a moment, Tang Zheng could not understand the use of this design. However, because of this throne, he instantly did not have a good impression of the person sitting on it. Not only that, a strong sense of disgust and hostility rose from the bottom of his heart. He hid these emotions very well. The others could not detect the slightest trace of them. Otherwise, if he showed even the slightest trace of hostility, the experts lying in ambush would attack together. Li Xiaotian looked expressionlessly at the middle-aged man on the throne. He was neither servile nor overbearing, and did not say a word. Suddenly, the palace fell into silence. Their eyes met, as if they were waiting for the other to break the silence first. Li Xiaotian was calm and composed. He did not have the slightest fear or unease of being in the middle of the imperial palace. On the contrary, he looked around with interest. The atmosphere became increasingly strange and awkward. Tang Zheng could not understand the thoughts of Li Xiaotian and the emperor, nor could he understand why the two of them had such a reaction. After a long time, the emperor finally opened his mouth. "Holy Maiden of the Li Palace, welcome." It was actually Hua Xia language. Tang Zheng was slightly surprised, but Li Xiaotian was not at all surprised. The island nation had not only studied Hua Xia for a year or so, but had studied it for over 1,000 years. Many of the island nation's languages came from Hua Xia, and the heir apparent of the island nation's imperial family would learn Hua Xia language from a young age. Li Xiaotian indifferently said, "Your Majesty, hello. Let's get straight to the point and get to the main topic." The emperor frowned. "There's no rush. I'm very anxious." Li Xiaotian objected. It had to be said that this conversation caused Tang Zheng to have a whole new level of respect for Li Xiaotian. She came to the depths of the palace alone, surrounded by strong enemies, yet she was able to remain calm and composed, and even refuted the Sky Emperor's opinion. This was too rare and commendable. The emperor's brows furrowed even tighter. Between his brows, there was no doubt that he was unhappy. Li Xiaotian acted as if he did not see it and ignored it. "Fine, then let's begin." The emperor compromised. "This is our Li Palace's sacred hand of Xinglin. He will diagnose you." Li Xiaotian pointed at Tang Zheng and introduced him. The emperor's gaze moved to Tang Zheng's body. "Since you are the sacred hand of Xinglin, may I ask your name?" "A nameless person." Tang Zheng had crossed swords with the people of the island nation too many times. He was not sure if his name had already been known by the people of the island nation, so he deliberately concealed his name. "Your Majesty, a name is just a code name. Why would a true expert use a name to display their strength?" Li Xiaotian tried to resolve the situation. The emperor gave Tang Zheng a deep look, tacitly agreeing with this explanation. "Then please come forward." The emperor compromised. Tang Zheng did not know what kind of illness the emperor was suffering from. His medical skills were only half-baked and he had not even learned the most basic medical knowledge. The life-continuing pill was a heaven-defying pill that did not belong in the scope of medical knowledge. But since things had already gotten to this point, he had no way out. Moreover, the chances of approaching the emperor were few and far between. This was the best opportunity. Take this opportunity to capture him alive, then everything will come to light. Tang Jing thought. A distance of 10 meters was not long, but it was not short either. But in this hall, this distance was filled with danger. Tang Jing could feel that the auras of the experts in the dark had firmly locked onto him. As long as he made the slightest movement, they would definitely kill him. Your Majesty, I have a few questions to ask. Li Xiaotian suddenly spoke again. The emperor's attention was immediately diverted. He looked at Li Xiaotian and asked, "What questions?" "The news of the sinking of your country's warship has spread like wildfire. I wonder if there are any results from the investigation." The emperor's eyelids suddenly twitched. His gaze became exceptionally sharp, like a sharp knife. Tang Zhang's heart thumped. What was the purpose of this woman asking this question? On this matter, the island nation was humiliated. This was definitely an opportunity for the emperor. To directly mention this matter, wasn't this just rubbing salt on the wound and increasing the hostility? He could not guess what Li Xiaotian was thinking, but he could not turn around to stop her. He could only bite the bullet and walk towards the emperor. He raised his head and looked at the emperor, not knowing how he would answer. A trace of anger flashed past the emperor's eyes as he said, "This is a matter of the country. It is not convenient to tell you." Is that so? But I know a bit of news. I wonder if your Majesty wants to know. Li Xiaotian said with a smile. The moment these words were spoken, the atmosphere in the hall changed. The emperor leaned forward and asked, "What news?" Tang Zhang's heart fiercely beat. He could feel Li Xiaotian's gaze on his back. It was meaningful and made him feel uneasy. This woman's style of doing things was unfathomable. At this time, what was the purpose of her words? Shit! Tang Jing secretly cried out as his expression changed. Chapter 663. All of this happened so quickly that Tang Jing had no time to react. There was a wolf in front of him and a tiger behind him. He was in a dilemma. He glanced at the emperor, but his attention was still on Li Xiaotian. He really wanted to know the news that she spoke of. Li Xiaotian glanced at Tang Jing and said, "Your country's warship sank because someone deliberately sabotaged it." The emperor's eyelids suddenly twitched. This was consistent with the results of their investigation. The large hole on the warship and the traces of battle showed that this was not caused by an explosion. It was caused by manpower and divine weapons. This result caused the royal family to be greatly shocked. A single person with such powerful strength was enough to sink a warship. This was too terrifying. Of course, no one would question this result. The royal family had been around for thousands of years, and they had seen too many miracles. It was not just a legend for an individual to be stronger than this. Therefore, the most important thing now was to find this person. Time was of the essence, and the investigation had yet to conclude. However, Li Xiaotian claimed that he had news, which made the emperor's expression change. Li Xiaotian was like a fisherman throwing down bait to lure the emperor. The emperor had no choice but to take the bait. He was too anxious to know about this matter. Is identical to, who is it? Far away on the horizon, but close at hand. Li Xiaotian's words were earth-shattering. So far away, yet so close. The emperor glanced at Li Xiaotian and immediately rejected the idea that she was the culprit. His gaze then turned and locked onto Tang Jing. Other than Li Xiaotian, there was only one other person in the hall, Tang Jing. Although the emperor did not understand why Li Xiaotian would betray his companions, he still made a prompt decision. The heavenly emperor's gaze became incomparably cold, like a venomous snake spitting out its tongue. He stared straight at Tang Jing and roared, "It's you. Catch him." As soon as his voice fell, figures leapt out from all directions of the hall, madly pouncing towards Tang Jing. Tang Jing cursed in his heart. This two-faced woman, he almost believed her, but he didn't expect that all of this was a trap. She knew that she was no match for Tang Jing, so she pretended to be weak. Then, she lured Tang Jing into the depths of the palace. Facing so many experts from the island nation, Tang Jing would not be able to escape. In the blink of an eye, Tang Jing thought of this and his face turned ashen. With so many experts surrounding him, Tang Jing didn't have time to think. He immediately used ground shrink, and the distance of a few meters was reduced to 0. He dodged the attacks of the others and directly arrived in front of the emperor. Baka! Roars and roars resounded throughout the hall as beams of cold light shot towards Tang Jing's body. Tang Jing didn't care. He knew that at this critical moment, if he didn't catch the Sky Emperor, then he would be trapped in an army of tens of thousands. All of this happened in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. A faint smile appeared on Li Xiaotian's face as she calmly watched the scene. All of this was her masterpiece, and she was the one who caused Tang Jing to fall into such a desperate situation. Tang Jing, will you be able to escape unscathed this time? She muttered to herself. Her face revealed a trace of excitement, as if she really wanted to know the answer to this question. Would Tang Jing be able to escape unscathed? He didn't know, and he didn't have time to think about it. He could clearly feel the monstrous killing intent behind him, as if it was going to tear him apart. He knew that his previous feeling was correct. There were indeed experts among these ambushers, and at least one of them was an expert of the evolved Jing stage. Tang Jing had dealt with evolved Jing stage experts too many times, so when the other party made a move, he could tell. This was one disaster after another. He had to stake it all on this. He didn't even turn his head. His speed was even faster as he attacked the Sky Emperor with lightning speed. The Sky Emperor retreated in panic, but he was sitting on the throne and had no way to retreat. Caw! Tang Jing's hand grabbed the Sky Emperor's neck. With a flip of his hand, the Sky Emperor was lifted up from the throne and blocked in front of Tang Jing, becoming his human shield. Baka! The experts all cursed and retreated. A few of them couldn't retreat in time and almost stabbed their weapons into the Sky Emperor's chest. Tang Jing was like a killing god. His entire body was releasing a dense killing intent. His eyes were wide open as he stared angrily and shouted, "Retreat, or I'll kill him immediately." With the Sky Emperor in his hand, Tang Jing heaved a sigh of relief. If he didn't make a prompt decision to not retreat and capture the Sky Emperor as a hostage, he would have fallen into a chaotic battle. The Sky Emperor's expression changed as he roared, "How dare you, you actually dared to capture me." Tang Jing's eyes flashed with a fierce light as he slapped his face and said, "Now you are my captive. Without my orders, you are not allowed to speak. Otherwise, I will make your face swell up like a pig's head." Everyone was stunned as they looked at the Sky Emperor who had a clear handprint on his face. They felt that everything was too unreal, like it was a dream. As the ruler of a country, he was actually captured by an outsider in his own palace and humiliated in front of his own people. This was simply a huge humiliation. The Sky Emperor was stunned and didn't come back to his senses. After a while, he started to shout. This time, he didn't use the Hua Xia language but the island nation language. On the verge of collapse, he finally subconsciously chose his mother tongue. Tang Jing didn't understand what he was saying, but it definitely wasn't anything good. Since he didn't listen, then there was no need to be polite with him. Tang Jing originally didn't have any respect for the Sky Emperor. Instead, he was filled with enmity. Since there was such a heaven-sent opportunity, then wouldn't it be a waste if he didn't punish him? Moreover, the island nation and Hua Xia were old enemies. If he slapped the Sky Emperor a few more times, then he would get back some interest from the invasion of the past. He suddenly had an idea. If there was a reporter who recorded this scene and spread it around the world, then the effect would be even better. The island nation's fate would be completely destroyed. In a short period of time, not only the royal family, but even the people wouldn't be able to raise their heads. Li Xiaotian's eyes lit up and praised, "What a powerful character. He can often do unexpected things." At this critical moment of life and death, he still did such a shocking thing. If he wasn't a cultivator, I really wouldn't want to spend so much effort to be his enemy. She faintly sighed and thought in her heart, unfortunately, his identity as a cultivator is destined to be my enemy. Even the experience of going through thick and thin together in the past can't change all of this. The Sky Emperor stopped his clamor, because Tang Zheng gave him a few more slaps on the face. He was about to go crazy, this person's guts were too big. As the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. The Sky Emperor was also such a smart person. At this critical moment, provoking the other party was not a wise move. Instead, it would provoke the other party's anger. In the end, the one who would suffer losses was himself. However, he still used his extremely angry eyes to stare at Tang Zheng, as if he wanted to swallow him in one bite. Tang Zheng ignored him and shouted at the crowd, "Back off a little. Don't block the way. Otherwise, your Sky Emperor will go to see King Yama." Everyone looked at each other and had no choice but to back off a little. This is a wise move. Who exactly are you? You dare to come to my island nation and stir up trouble? One of the people in the crowd used Huaxia language to ask. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as his gaze locked onto this person. This person's aura was too strong. Tang Zheng could tell at a glance that he was the powerful master-level warrior that he felt. This person should be around 60 years old. He had a white beard under his nose. He wore a set of warrior's clothes and wooden clogs. There was a katana at his waist. His gaze was gloomy and his aura was terrifying. Who I am is not important. What is important is that you must honestly tell me what I want to know. Otherwise, even if I die, I will drag your Sky Emperor down with me. Tang Zheng said fearlessly. In the midst of tens of thousands of soldiers, he was calm and composed. This calm and composed demeanor of a great general was impressive. However, the people of the island nation only felt fear and anger. Where did this freak come from? Many people subconsciously looked at Li Xiaotian. Wasn't this person brought by him? Could it be that these two people were in cahoots with each other? Many people of the island nation had already taken small steps and surrounded Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian did not retreat an inch and said indifferently, "You have found the wrong target to deal with me. Your enemy is him. As for his name, I can make it big for you. He is called Tang Zheng. I think you are not too unfamiliar with this name. However, many experts of your country have fallen in his hands." Li Xiaotian really sold out Tang Zheng completely. Back in the 100,000 Mountains, Tang Zheng had killed many experts of the island nation. Li Xiaotian knew very well that Li Xiaotian knew the feud between him and the island nation. "You are Tang Zheng." As expected, the Sky Emperor and the great master martial artist cried out in alarm at the same time. It was obvious that they were not unfamiliar with this name. The island nation had always paid attention to the collection of information about Huaxia. How could they not know about this new rising star of Huaxia? As for what happened in the 100,000 Mountains, they were not too clear about it. This was because Tang Zheng had done it very cleanly. No one came back to report, so the people of the island nation did not know that all of this was related to Tang Zheng. Seeing that his identity had been exposed, Tang Zheng was angry and regretful. He had been possessed and actually believed in Li Xiaotian. Could this woman's words be trusted? Now you know that you have been tricked. You are in a desperate situation. You are probably going to die. Seeing Tang Zheng fiercely staring at him, Li Xiaotian met his gaze and charmingly smiled, saying, "Tang Zheng, don't blame me. Tang Zheng coldly snorted and cursed in his heart, it would be strange if I don't blame you. I still want to kill you. If you fall into my hands in the future, I will definitely not be merciful. Even if you have a glib tongue, don't think that I will believe you. But it was too late to think about all this now. The most important thing was to solve the problem in front of him. Since that was the case, then Tang Zheng had nothing to hide. The fingers that were grabbing the Sky Emperor's neck tightened. The Sky Emperor gasped for breath and almost suffocated. Chapter 664. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. No one doubted the truth of his words. This person was extremely daring, there was probably nothing in this world that he did not dare to do. No one dared to use the Emperor's life to test his courage. All right, we will answer truthfully. Don't hurt His Majesty the Emperor. The martial artist said. Why did your worship attack that island? Tang Zheng asked. Are you here for this matter? I'm the one asking you, not you. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and said unhappily. The martial artist was shocked and quickly advised, don't hurt His Majesty, I'll answer you. Because the intelligence shows that there are people on that island who are a serious threat to the safety of our country. Information. Tang Zheng was extremely suspicious, where did the information come from? This is a secret, I don't know either. Tang Zheng laughed coldly, hee, is that so? Since you are unable to give me an answer, then as the ruler of a country, you should know, right? As he spoke, he lifted the Emperor up. Whoa! The Emperor immediately let out a suffocating whimper, his face turning purple-red. You will tell me, right? Tang Zheng asked with a smile. The Emperor nodded with difficulty. Only then can I save my life. Tang Zheng smiled in satisfaction and put down the Emperor. The Emperor greedily gasped for breath and said with fear, this is what the Imperial Advisor told me. Imperial Advisor, who is the Imperial Advisor? Tang Zheng asked puzzledly. You are a foreigner, of course you don't know the Imperial Advisor. The Imperial Advisor is the person with the highest cultivation in our country. The Emperor said with some pride. It was enough to make the ruler of a country proud. This showed how powerful the Imperial Advisor was. Although the island nation was a small country, it was still a country after all. The Imperial Advisor was definitely not an ordinary person. How did he know that there are people on that island who threaten your country? Tang Zheng asked. According to what Marshall said, the whereabouts of Wu Junshan and the others were extremely secretive. Furthermore, they were in the vast ocean and would not be easily exposed. How did the Imperial Advisor know? The more questions Tang Zheng had, the more he felt that this matter was confusing. Hearing this, the Heavenly Emperor shook his head with difficulty. I don't know either. How could Tang Zheng believe him? He said angrily, you're the ruler of a country, yet you don't know anything. Are you a good-for-nothing? Anger appeared on the Emperor's face, but he didn't dare to say anything. He said, I have never doubted the Imperial Preceptor. If he doesn't tell me, of course I won't know. Tang Zheng looked at him suspiciously, but couldn't find any clues after a long time, so he said, then quickly call the State Preceptor and ask him where he got this information. The State Preceptor's residence doesn't have a phone, so we can't contact him. F***CK. Tang Zheng really wanted to curse. What kind of society is this? Why are you still so antique? Since that's the case, then you can only blame your bad luck. Tang Zheng fiercely said. You, what do you want to do? The Heavenly Emperor panicked. Tell your men to send a message to that nuisance State Preceptor. Find out what happened and then come back to ransom him. You want to kidnap His Majesty. When everyone heard this, they were both shocked and angry. This person's guts were bigger than the heavens. The kidnapping of a country's ruler would definitely cause a huge uproar. At that time, the entire country would lose face and the royal family would be criticized by the people. All in all, there would be a lot of negative effects. No, don't even think about leaving the imperial palace today. The martial scholar angrily objected. Tang Zheng laughed in disdain. If you don't want me to leave, then let him accompany me in death. You. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Move aside. Tang Zheng held the emperor and moved forward step by step, forcing everyone to retreat. Li Xiaotian's eyes flashed as he fanned the flames. You're just going to let him take the emperor away like this? You brought him here, so you can't absolve yourself from the blame. Catch her. Hearing this, the Grand Master martial artist squinted at Li Xiaotian and ordered. Everyone quickly surrounded her, but Li Xiaotian was calm and collected. She crossed her arms as if she didn't find the danger at all. He looked at the emperor with a smile that wasn't a smile. The emperor glanced at Li Xiaotian and yelled, "Stop! You're not allowed to hurt her." "Your Majesty, they are in cahoots," the martial master reminded him bitterly. "Shut up. Pass down my order." "You're not allowed to be rude to Miss Li," the emperor gnashed his teeth and ordered. Everyone looked at each other. Although they had no idea why the emperor would give such an order, they could only obey unconditionally. Tang Zheng looked at Li Xiaotian with a meaningful gaze. "You're so good to her. What's the relationship between the two of you? What do you think?" Li Xiaotian chuckled. "Li Xiaotian, I've taken a tumble for trusting you. I'll remember this. I'll learn from my mistakes. I'll settle this debt with you in the future." Tang Zheng coldly said. "You want to settle the debt with me? Do you think you still have the chance? I have the emperor in my hands. Do you want him to die?" Li Xiaotian walked towards Tang Zheng and said, "To others, he's the ruler of a country. But to me, you're my main target. Everyone else has to take a step back." "Miss Li, stop." The martial scholar immediately stopped Li Xiaotian. "The emperor is our emperor. I won't let anyone endanger his life." Li Xiaotian indifferently said, "His life is already in danger. So you've already failed in your duty." The martial scholar thought in his heart, "Isn't it because you brought Tang Zheng's men? Otherwise, how could there be such a huge mess? You really want to kill me?" Seeing Li Xiaotian's resolute attitude, Tang Zheng asked. "Of course, cultivators are really a headache." Li Xiaotian rubbed her forehead, faintly sighed, and said with a headache. "Then the next time we meet, I won't show any mercy." Tang Zheng said without any trace of politeness. "I don't think there'll be a next time." Li Xiaotian was filled with confidence. "Since all of this is a trap set by you, does that mean that treating the emperor's illness is also a lie?" "Humph, you're really scheming. Using the emperor's illness to lower my guard." Tang Zheng laughed at himself. He was truly too foolish and naive. Back then, he had thought that if he could find out what kind of hidden illness the Sky Emperor had, then it would be a serious blow to the island. It turned out that it was all his wishful thinking. Li Xiaotian smiled as he shook his head. "No, you're wrong. I didn't lie to you about this. The emperor is indeed sick and it's a hidden illness. Am I right, Your Majesty?" An awkward expression flashed across the emperor's face, but he did not deny it. Tang Zheng deeply looked at him. From his expression, he could tell that this matter was most likely true. "Li Xiaotian, you're simply too good at lying. 70% is fake and 30% is true. It's impossible to tell." Tang Zheng hatefully said as he finally recognized this woman. She was black-bellied to the extreme, just like a beautiful snake. She had a strong camouflage ability, and if one was not careful, they would be bitten to death. Li Xiaotian did not mind and smiled. "Many thanks for the praise. I accept this evaluation." He suddenly changed the topic and said, "Everyone, if His Majesty is kidnapped, then you've failed in your duty. Do you think you have a chance to live? This, everyone immediately understood the meaning behind his words. If the ruler of a country was kidnapped right in front of their eyes, then it would be their negligence. This was different from other crimes. This was a death sentence. If they forcefully attacked to save the emperor and something happened to him, then they would also be sentenced to death. If they attacked, they would die. If they retreated, then they would also die. Since the result was the same, then they would naturally choose to fight. What if they managed to save the emperor? No one had thought of this point before. Li Xiaotian had pointed out the mystery in one sentence. It could be said that he had put in a lot of thought into this and was also abnormally ruthless. Tang Zhang's head thumped as he immediately understood this point. He secretly cursed at the ruthless woman, and his hand that was grabbing onto the emperor's neck tightened. Right now, the chances of him using the emperor as a hostage to escape were very slim. What followed was a tough battle. Since it was an unavoidable tough battle, then Tang Zhang would naturally not give up on the emperor. Not only could he be a human shield, if he was lucky enough to kidnap him, then he would be of great use. Looks like you've already made your choice. Since that's the case, gentlemen, there's no need to delay any longer. After Li Xiaotian finished speaking, he took a step back. She understood how powerful Tang Zhang was. Since there were so many cannon fodder attacking, then she should retreat a little, in case Tang Zhang suddenly went berserk and put her in danger. Every step she took was carefully calculated. It could be said that she had put in a lot of thought into it, and her thoughts could be said to be extremely meticulous. It was indeed not an easy thing to make an enemy out of such a person. The martial scholar's eyes became exceptionally sharp as he walked towards Tang Zhang step by step. The others surrounded Tang Zhang, and in an instant, not even a drop of water could leak out. He was like a small boat in the middle of a vast ocean. Whether or not he would be able to withstand this great storm was unknown. Suddenly, the great master martial scholar shouted in the language of the island nation, and everyone attacked at the same time. The large group of people were like ants, wanting to bite Tang Zhang to death. Tang Zhang did not say a word. The war soul sword was already in his hand. The long sword quickly pointed out. A person was unable to dodge, and was directly pierced through the chest. Li Xiaotian's eyes flashed as she stared fixedly at the war soul sword. Especially the speed, trajectory and technique of Tang Zhang's sword, it caused her to be shocked. She had never seen such a sword technique before. Fast, ruthless, accurate. The essence of these sword techniques was displayed to the fullest extent. This set of sword techniques was completely straightforward, not beating around the bush, and not even the slightest bit of fancy movements. When did he learn such a strange sword technique? The cold light in Li Xiaotian's eyes caused people to feel even more terrified. This kind of guy who had always been unexpected, if he continued to live, then in the future, he would create even more miracles. No matter what, we must succeed this time. Chapter 665. This set of sword techniques that caused Li Xiaotian to turn pale with fright was of course the wind-chasing sword technique. The essence of the wind-chasing sword technique lay in its exquisite sword moves that did not even consume innate qi. Tang Zhang knew that he was facing a fierce battle and would consume a lot of energy. By using the wind-chasing sword technique, he could reduce the consumption of innate qi and obtain more advantages for himself. The essence of the wind-chasing sword technique was fully displayed by Tang Zhang. In the blink of an eye, 5 or 6 people had fallen under his war soul sword. Immediately, everyone felt as if they were facing a great enemy. They had never seen such an exquisite sword technique before. However, no one retreated. Instead, they charged forward wave after wave, as if they did not care about their lives. Tang Zhang was methodical. As he attacked, he grabbed the Sky Emperor and walked towards the entrance of the main hall. That great master has not made a move yet. These people are at most pre-celestial stage warriors, so they can't do anything to me. The key is that Great Master is the biggest threat. Tang Jing thought silently. His gaze swept across. Why did he not see any trace of that Great Master warrior? Tang Zhang was overwhelmed with shock. His gaze was like a scanner as it swept across the place once again. There was still no trace of that person. Something's wrong. He became alarmed and had a strong sense of unease. At this time, the Great Master would not run away. There must be something wrong if he suddenly disappeared. A few enemies attacked again. Tang Zheng did the same thing and waved his War Soul Sword to block. Block. The War Soul Sword collided with a person's katana. The huge recoil caused his arm to go numb. Before he could understand what was going on, the katana was like a poisonous snake, rushing straight in and slashing at his shoulder, almost piercing through his chest. Tang Zhang's eyes instantly widened. This slash was too unexpected. He did not take it seriously at first, but he did not expect it to be so powerful. He immediately locked onto his opponent. It was a young man with a strange smile on his face. The other party was so young, how could he be so strong? This attack was comparable to the attack of a great master warrior. Tang Zhang's eyes glowed. He endured the pain from his shoulder and held the emperor even tighter. Obviously, the other party's intention was to make him let go, but he didn't do as the other party wished. The other party seemed to have realized that his plan had failed, but he was not discouraged. He raised his hand and slashed down with his blade, preparing to launch another attack. Don't even think about it. Tang Jing roared. He had just been tricked by him, so how could he make the same mistake again? The War Soul Sword struck out like lightning. This strike was not the wind-chasing sword technique, but the flying immortals from heaven. With the support of the innate chi, the power of the War Soul Sword increased greatly. The terrifying pressure caused everyone to feel a strong pressure, and their movements involuntarily became slower. However, the young man wasn't affected too much. His expression only became serious. With a low roar, a faint light appeared on his katana. Saber light. This person's saber technique had actually been trained to such a high level, to the point of being able to refine a saber light. This was a realm that many warriors dreamed of. Tang Jing didn't even need to look to determine that the other party was in the Great Master realm, but why didn't he notice such a powerful expert just now? Could it be that his ability to conceal his aura was also top-notch? He didn't have time to think about it carefully as the War Soul Sword and the katana collided once again. The intense sparks and terrifying aura caused the two of them to involuntarily take a few steps back. Their eyes met and they could see the shock in each other's eyes. You're so young, why are you so powerful? The other party's voice was very low, like a black cloud pressing down on his head, making him feel very uncomfortable. Tang Zheng's heart moved. This voice was too familiar. Wasn't this the voice of the old man in the Great Master realm? It's you. So you changed your appearance. Tang Zheng suddenly realized. When he was in the northeast mountain forest, he met a ninja who knew genjutsu. This person was definitely a ninja and could use some genjutsu to confuse people. He didn't notice that he was mixed in with the crowd. If his luck wasn't good enough, he would definitely have fallen into his hands. How sinister. Tang Zheng said coldly. When the other party realized that his identity had been seen through, his face fluctuated, and in the next second, he returned to his original appearance. You were lucky just now, but you won't be so lucky next time. The person sneered and retreated. The others quickly moved forward and surrounded him, causing him to disappear into the crowd. Tang Jing secretly cursed. This person used ninjutsu again, changed his appearance, and hid in the crowd, waiting for an opportunity to sneak attack. Damn, shameless enough. Since it's like this, then don't blame me. Tang Jing originally wanted to rely on his own strength to charge out, but now all of this had become unrealistic. He could already see from afar that there were many people gathered outside the hall, a sea of people. It could be said that it was too difficult for him to escape from such a sea of people. The others didn't know what he meant and once again rushed over crazily. Boom! With a loud sound, a huge monster suddenly appeared in the hall. The floor directly shattered under its feet and flew in all directions, hitting many people, causing them to scream and fall to the ground. Everyone was dumbfounded as they raised their heads to look at this gigantic creature. What was this thing? Why did it suddenly appear here, as if it had fallen from the sky? Li Xiaotian stood at the periphery with a shocked expression on her face. She muttered, "I almost forgot that he still has the help of the four symbols venerable. However, even though it's big enough, it's still a conspicuous target. It won't be that easy to escape." As soon as the four symbols venerable appeared, the situation of the battle immediately changed. Tang Zheng leaped, jumping onto the body of the four symbols venerable, and then disappeared into his chest. He had already killed the Mikado and thrown him aside, and he wholeheartedly controlled the four symbols venerable. This four symbols venerable was the combination of four symbols venerable, and its power was more powerful than the previous four symbols venerable alone. Both its attack power and resistance were significantly higher. It was all thanks to the four symbols venerable that he was able to escape from the world of spirits and souls unscathed. If he could escape from such a dangerous world of spirits and souls, then escaping from the Kokyo should not be a problem. Tang Zheng was very confident. However, he had no choice but to use the four symbols venerables. The four symbols venerables had always been his final line of defense. He was unwilling to use them unless it was a matter of life and death. Especially when he was under the gazes of so many people. Such a commotion was too great and too eye-catching. Tang Zheng controlled the four symbols venerable. His head had already passed through the roof of the hall, and he had a panoramic view of the Kokyo. Countless reinforcements were coming from all directions. Not only were there warriors, but there were also modern soldiers, all armed to the teeth. "We can't stay here for long. Let's leave first." Boom! 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 The four symbols venerable strode out of the hall. Immediately, the hall was reduced to rubble under the four symbols venerable's feet. The ancient building that had stood there for hundreds and thousands of years was destroyed just like that. Some people who didn't know what was good for them charged over. All sorts of weapons were thrown at the four symbols venerables, but they only caused sparks. The four symbols venerables remained unscathed. Every time the four symbols venerables kicked out, someone would be smashed to pieces. Screams were heard everywhere, and the situation took a turn for the worse. The side that had the advantage in numbers was now the weak side. Before the four symbols venerable, they were like chickens, unable to withstand a single blow. Clang! With a single punch, Tang Zheng tore down the door of the main hall. He barged his way through and violently rushed to the plaza in front of the main hall, causing everything to become spacious. "Don't let him kidnap the Mikado. Stop him." The Grandmaster Warrior reverted to his original appearance. He emerged from the crowd and shouted hysterically in the island nation's language. At the same time, he soared into the air like a bird and attacked the four symbols venerable. The katana shone brightly under the sun, reflecting the sun's rays. A terrifying pressure covered the sky and covered the earth. Tang Zheng locked onto the opponent and snorted. "I let you escape just now. Now that you have nowhere to hide, let's see how you're going to escape." With a thought, the four symbols venerable's giant hand reached forward. Caw! The giant hand firmly grasped the katana, and the dazzling light immediately disappeared without a trace. The Grand Master Warrior was shocked. He wanted to pull the katana back, but found that he couldn't move it at all. He immediately had an ominous premonition. He threw away the katana and flew back. It had to be known that back then, a single four symbols venerable one was enough to contend against a great master martial artist. Now that there were four symbols venerable one combined, its power would naturally increase greatly. Moreover, Tang Zheng's control over the four symbols venerable one had already reached the point of perfection, allowing the four symbols venerable one's power to be displayed to the extreme. Want to escape? No way. Crack. The katana was crushed into pieces by the giant hand. Then, with a wave of the hand, the pieces flew all over the sky like hidden weapons, heading straight for the Grandmaster Warrior's back. The Grandmaster Warrior turned pale with fright. He knew how dangerous it was behind him without even turning his head. He could only desperately circulate his power in an attempt to dodge the attack. Poof! He dodged most of the pieces, but eventually, a piece shot into his back and came out of his abdomen, bringing with it a mist of blood. He staggered and fell from the sky. He couldn't help but let out a scream. Stay here! Tang Jing roared. He waved his giant hand and caught the Grandmaster in midair. When the Grandmaster fell into his palm, he bounced off the ground and jumped out. Tang Zheng wouldn't let him do as he wished. He closed his fingers and immediately surrounded the Grandmaster, holding him tightly in his palm. Don't you know ninjutsu and take advantage of the situation? Let's see how you're going to escape like this. Tang Jing mocked him. He knew very well what a Grandmaster warrior meant to a small island nation. It was already difficult for Huaxia to cultivate a Grandmaster warrior, let alone an island nation. This was also why there was only one Grandmaster warrior in the huge palace. It was because they were so rare that they could be called national treasures. The national treasure of an island nation was Tang Zhang's enemy. Therefore, he didn't pity them at all. He only had one thought: destroy them. Chapter 666. The others were dumbstruck as they watched the scene unfold. A master-level martial artist was killed just like that. That was a clean death. While the other party was in a daze, the four symbols knight took huge strides and ran out of the Kokyo. The palaces and buildings along the way were reduced to dust. No one dared to go up and stop the four symbols knight because they knew very well that it would be akin to a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Li Xiaotian looked at the four symbols knight running out with a complicated expression. However, there was no despair on her face. Instead, she wore a ruthless expression as she muttered to herself, "Do you really think you can leave so easily? You've underestimated the power of a country." As if to prove what she said, a sharp sound of something tearing through the air was heard as soon as she finished speaking. Tang Zheng was immediately alerted when he heard the sound. He quickly turned his head to look. F***CK. A missile spewing flames was heading straight for him. He could not help but stare blankly. That was no ordinary missile. Furthermore, it was at such a close distance. He was in for a big deal. Boom! The four symbols knight stomped hard with the tip of its foot. A building was reduced to rubble again. The four symbols knight used the powerful recoil to rise into the air. The missile flew past the four symbols knight's feet. The four symbols knight landed heavily, kicking up a cloud of dust. Before Tang Jing could breathe a sigh of relief, the missile took a huge turn in the air and flew back at him. He was stunned for a moment and felt like cursing. The missile had obviously locked onto him. Even though he had dodged it, the missile did not explode. Instead, it turned around and chased after him. He wanted to cry but had no tears. The Kokyo was not as simple as he thought. There was actually a missile defense system. The four symbols knight was the best target. However, he would not sit and wait for death. That was not his style. Seeing that the missile was getting closer, the four symbols knight stomped hard on the ground, sending huge rocks flying. It then swept its leg across. Swoosh! 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 The sound of something tearing through the air was like rain hitting a banana leaf, resounding throughout the sky. The rocks formed a huge net that the missile could not penetrate. Boom! With a loud bang, a flame soared in the air. The earth seemed to tremble, and the deafening explosion made the people on the ground unable to stand steadily. Everyone swayed left and right, but their gazes never left the four symbols venerable. The series of attacks and counterattacks had left a deep impression on them. When they saw the missiles earlier, many people were overjoyed. They thought that the battle was over and that there were no more variables. After all, everyone knew the power of the missiles. But reality proved that everyone was too optimistic. The missile was very powerful, but this big guy was not to be trifled with. It easily dodged the missile attack and even detonated the missile, causing it to lose its power. Before Tang Jing could rejoice, he heard the sharp sound of something breaking through the air again. This time, it was not one missile, but three. Tang Jing really wanted to say, "Thank you for thinking so highly of me, to actually launch 3 missiles at once." This made things even more difficult. Tang Jing ran. The four symbols venerable's huge body ran for a long distance in the Kokyo. Everyone dodged, leaving a mess along the way. The Kokyo was completely destroyed because of this. He wondered how much the people of the island nation and the royal family would feel. In any case, Tang Jing did not feel bad at all. With the missiles chasing after him, he could not care less. Moreover, the more the people of the island nation felt bad, the happier he was. The more he destroyed, the better. The 3 missiles were faster than the 4 symbols venerable. In the blink of an eye, they were right behind the 4 symbols venerable. The 4 symbols venerable took to the air again. Its huge body flipped nimbly in the air, dodging 2 more missiles. Suddenly, Tang Jing screamed, as the 3rd missile changed its trajectory midway. He did not have time to dodge, and only heard a loud explosion. A huge recoil pushed him forward. The 4 symbols venerable's huge body fell to the ground with a loud crash, sending dust everywhere. The cheers were thunderous. The others jumped up and down excitedly, screaming in a language they could not understand. With the missiles hitting the big guy, everything was settled. The other party would not be able to escape. Li Xiaotian's brows relaxed, and a smile gradually appeared at the corner of her mouth. She looked at the remaining 2 missiles that turned back in the air. She believed that no matter how powerful the 4 symbols venerable was, if he was hit by those 2 missiles, he would be badly injured even if he did not die. Then, she could really rest easy. Tang Jing lay in the 4 symbols venerable's chest in a daze. His qi and blood were in turmoil, and blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. His body felt like it had been run over by a huge truck. His bones creaked, and he could fall apart at any time. He was hit. Those were the words that popped up in his head. D****. Can I still move? He tried to move his arm. Fortunately, he could still lift it. Although his body felt like it was falling apart, it was not, and he still had the ability to move. Suddenly, he took a deep breath. His ears pricked up, and he looked into the distance. Immediately, his eyes emitted a terrifying gaze. He cursed, F***ck, again. You're getting excited, aren't you? He did not have time to control the 4 symbols venerable to turn around. He hugged a pillar beside him and roared, swinging the pillar with force. Whoosh! The pillar swept toward the 2 missiles with a biting cold wind. Boom! Boom! The pillar hit the missiles and exploded. The powerful shockwave pushed the 4 symbols venerable back some distance. Pfft! Tang Jing spat out another mouthful of blood. However, this was much easier than being hit by the 2 missiles. The others did not expect him to be able to fight back under such circumstances. Even Li Xiaotian could not help but turn pale with fright. She muttered to herself, impossible, impossible. He can still fight back. After pausing for a moment, she immediately roared at the crowd. This time, she was actually speaking the island nation language. Tang Zheng could not understand what she was saying, but there was no doubt that it was not something good. That was because the island nation people all looked ashamed after hearing this. Then, they became abnormally angry and charged toward Tang Zheng as if they had gone mad. They did not care about the great threat of the four symbols venerable at all. Ding! Ding dang! Thousands of weapons and bullets hit the four symbols venerable, but only sparks flew. Tang Zheng hid among them and was not harmed by these people. However, this was not a solution. As the saying went, ants eat an elephant. Was this not a very vivid reality? The key was that these ants still had a weapon of mass destruction. The missiles could be fired at any time. When that happened, Tang Zheng would be in big trouble. No, I have to leave this place. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and stood up. However, the four symbols venerable did not stand up. Crap, the four symbols venerable seems to have been damaged. His heart immediately fell to the bottom. The four symbols venerable had accompanied him for so long, often saving his life at the most critical moment of his life. His invulnerable, indestructible image had long been firmly fixed in Tang Zheng's heart. However, after being attacked by the missile this time, although there was no damage on the surface, there was definitely something wrong with it. He was actually unable to stand up normally. He was angry and distressed. Damn the missile, its power was actually so strong. Moreover, he did not even know where the missile was fired from. All in all, this is a heavy loss. The four symbols venerable can't move, so I can only rely on my own two legs to charge out. He gritted his teeth, and with a thought, he walked out of the four symbols venerable's body with the Sky Emperor in his hand. The four symbols venerable disappeared and was once again returned to his summer pouch. Everyone subconsciously stopped their attacks and looked at Tang Zheng and the Sky Emperor in a daze. Immediately after, thunderous cheers rang out, and the excitement on their faces became even stronger. Tang Zheng's face was ashen, with the Sky Emperor in one hand and the War Soul sword in the other. He rushed forward with a majestic gait. The crowd immediately burst into an uproar, each and every one of them excitedly waved their weapons and attacked Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng did not reject them, and continuously waved the War Soul sword, displaying the essence of the wind-chasing sword technique once again. The exquisite sword moves knocked down the enemy again and again, and he actually relied on his own strength to push forward a few meters. A bunch of good-for-nothings. Li Xiaotian said in disappointment, so many people can't even stop him. Even though she said that, she did not dare to step forward. Instead, she hid far away. She was very clear that at this moment, Tang Zheng hated her to the bone. If she rushed forward, Tang Zheng would definitely attack her without caring about anything and kill her. With her intelligence, how could she voluntarily send herself to the door to become a ghost under the sword? Although he is a good-for-nothing, after all, there are many people. We can exhaust him to death by taking turns. Heh heh, ants swallowing an elephant, this scenery is really good. Li Xiaotian raised her eyebrows, showing her seductive manner. The corners of her mouth raised a trace of arc, and she muttered to herself. Tang Zheng's footsteps became slower and slower, and the threats from all directions became more and more numerous. Even though he had great abilities, facing such a sea of people, he was powerless. Fortunately, he was using the wind-chasing sword technique, so the consumption of his innate chi was slow. Moreover, he had the Sky Emperor as a human shield in his hand, who could occasionally block a few attacks for him, causing the enemy to be wary of attacking him. Looking from afar, reinforcements continued to pour in from all directions. Furthermore, the rumbling sound of propellers could be heard from the horizon. The helicopter had arrived. With the combined attack of the air and land, he would be even more passive. Could it be that this is my Waterloo? Am I going to die in a foreign land? He laughed at himself. His gaze turned and looked at the Sky Emperor in his hand. He had already awakened, but he was like a marionette. As Tang Zhang's arm moved, he did not have any of the majesty and demeanor of the Sky Emperor. He was in an extremely sorry state. Even if I die, I will drag you down with me, Tang Zhang said hatefully. When the Sky Emperor heard those words, his face became even paler as he said, "Let me go, and I will spare your life. Right now, you are a captive. You should be begging me to spare your life. However, you are the Sky Emperor of an island nation. If I die, having you accompany me in death would not be a waste of my life. I have done a good deed for Huaxia." Tang Zheng laughed maniacally. Chapter 667. Seeing that Tang Zheng was not afraid at all, the Sky Emperor's face turned ashen, knowing that he was doomed. Kill. Tang Zheng mechanically waved his war soul sword, taking away one life after another, but the number of enemies kept increasing, and he could not kill them all. His body was also covered in blood, and blood dripped down his clothes to the ground, leaving behind a long trail of blood. Suddenly, a flame lit up in the distance. The flame soared into the sky, even covering the scorching sun in the sky. Thick smoke rose into the air, and many people turned their heads to look. "It's on fire. Quickly put out the fire." The imperial palace was an ancient building, most of it was made of bricks and wood, and many of the buildings were connected to each other. As long as one place was on fire, the other places would quickly be affected. Therefore, many people turned around and rushed towards the fire to put out the fire. "Another place is on fire." Screams rose one after another, and flames rose into the air from different places one after another. Thick smoke billowed, enveloping the imperial palace. Arson. The smart people immediately realized this. If it wasn't arson, then there definitely wouldn't be so many places that caught fire one after another. Li Xiaotian frowned, looking at the flames in the sky. He exclaimed, luring the tiger away from the mountain, "Someone came to save him. Marshal, it must be that woman. She is too daring to take such a risk for Tang Zheng. She really doesn't want to live anymore." Her expression changed greatly. She did not expect this. She had schemed for a long time, but in the end, she had missed this point. In fact, although she knew that Marshall's cultivation was higher than her own, she was not really afraid of Marshall. Because she knew that many times, Marshall's strength did not represent everything, and schemes were often more useful than Marshall's strength. She originally thought that in the depths of the palace, with Marshall's strength, no matter what, he would not be able to stir up any waves, much less give Tang Zheng much help. But she never thought that Marshall would actually use this move. This move could be said to have hit his weak spot. The Kokyo was like the emperor. It was the symbol of the power of the island nation. It was also a belief and perseverance in the hearts of the people. If the Kokyo was burned down, it would definitely cause a strong reaction among the people and shake their beliefs. Emperors could be passed down from generation to generation, but the Kokyo could not be replicated. If it was destroyed by fire, even if it was rebuilt, it would be difficult to rebuild the faith of the people. Li Xiaotian didn't understand this, which was why she miscalculated. With someone going to put out the fire, the pressure on Tang Zheng was greatly reduced. His counterattacks became stronger and stronger, and his advancing speed became faster and faster. The enemy retreated in defeat, and their momentum instantly weakened. His aura immediately surged, and the flames of despair once again ignited in his heart. His eyes lit up as he looked in the direction of the flames. Who set the fire? For a moment, he couldn't figure it out. Suddenly, whoosh! A beam of white light shot out from the direction of the fire. Wherever it passed, it immediately turned into a sea of fire. "Xiao Bai!" Tang Zheng exclaimed. The fire was actually set by Xiao Bai. Yesterday, He was still thinking that if he set the Kokyo on fire, it would definitely be very refreshing. He didn't expect that this little fellow would know his thoughts and actually do it. Not good. Suddenly, his brows trembled as he realized another point. Xiao Bai is by Marshall's side. If it came to set the fire, then with Marshall's temper, it would definitely come. Didn't I repeatedly warn you not to let her get involved? I told her to run away as soon as she saw any movement. This foolish woman, she actually rushed in without caring about anything. Sigh. He had 1,000 thoughts running through his mind. For a moment, he didn't know whether to criticize Marshall or praise him. The more critical the moment of life and death, the more one could see a person clearly. As the saying goes, a friend in need is a friend indeed. For Marshall to be able to overcome the difficulties and come to save him without hesitation, this already explained everything. Although he wanted to blame him, he couldn't say it out loud. Sure enough, not far behind Xiao Bai, there was a tall and beautiful figure. She was like a phoenix bathed in fire, so bright that no one could look straight at her. Li Xiaotian also saw Marshall, his eyes immediately emitted a cold gaze, and shouted, "Stop her." Someone immediately went forward to intercept Marshall, but Xiao Bai was like a warrior. She opened her small mouth, and monstrous flames spewed out from her small mouth, turning the world in front of her into a sea of fire. The enemy immediately turned into a flaming man, screaming miserably as he rolled on the ground. Marshall quickly passed by these people and came to Tang Zhang's side. Looking at the wounds and blood on Tang Zhang's body, her face became very ugly, and she asked with concern, "How are you?" Tang Zhang grinned and revealed a carefree smile, and said, "I won't die. Why are you here? If I don't come, what will you do? I can't let you be trapped here alone, but I can't escape," Marshall said resolutely. "Doesn't this mean that both of them are trapped?" "Humph, that's better than being trapped alone," Marshall said disapprovingly. He turned his gaze and saw Li Xiaotian hiding behind the crowd. His gaze turned cold as he said, "Did she betray you?" Tang Zhang also looked at Li Xiaotian, and laughed bitterly. "This is all her trap. I trusted her, this is my own fault. I already said that her words can't be trusted. Yeah, I should have listened to you long ago." Marshall was slightly startled. He looked at Tang Zhang with a complicated expression, and said, "It's not too late now. Who is this?" "The Sky Emperor, my captive." Marshall was not frightened by the identity of the Sky Emperor. Instead, he was beaming with joy and said, "It's good that we caught him. The whereabouts of master and mistress are confirmed." Tang Zhang wanted to explain the matter of the imperial advisor to her, but this was not the right time, so he chose to remain silent. Xiao Bai jumped onto Tang Zhang's body, scratched his hair, and bared his teeth as he pointed at the flames in all directions, as if he was asking for credit. Tang Zhang laughed involuntarily, and said, "I know that all of this is thanks to you. Xiao Bai is the strongest." Xiao Bai was like a child being praised by his parents. He was so excited that he danced with joy, looking comical and cute. The flames around them were gradually extinguished, and the enemies surrounded them once again. "Marshall, take him with you. I'll deal with these people," Tang Zhang said. Marshall did not argue and took over the Sky Emperor. Tang Zhang took the lead and stood proudly. The War Soul sword in his hand disappeared and was replaced by the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows. When Li Xiaotian saw the two weapons, his eyes immediately blossomed with a blazing light. His palms itched, and he wished that he could immediately rush up and take the two divine weapons for himself. But she knew that the moment Tang Zhang pulled open the heaven-shocking bow, its attack power was even more terrifying than the War Soul sword. Thus, she decisively floated backwards without the slightest hesitation. This was Li Xiaotian. He judged the situation, made a prompt decision, and did not hesitate. His temperament had been cultivated to the point where he was almost emotionless. This was the outstanding trait of the Holy Maiden of Li Palace. This was the trait that the person who had experienced countless eliminations and finally sat on the Holy Maiden's throne should have. However, the other island nation people did not have Li Xiaoyan's trait. Seeing that the flames were extinguished, they crazily launched another attack. Wang! Tang Jing gently released his fingers, the bowstring trembled, and the shooting sun arrow turned into a ray of light and shot out. Whiz! To Tang Jing, the sharp sound of something tearing through the air was like heavenly music from the 9 heavens. He could hear it to the extreme, but to the enemy, it was a death sentence. Wherever the shooting sun arrow passed, the air would tremble, and the people of the island nation would be unable to move, as they were enveloped by the powerful aura of the shooting sun arrow. Boom! 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 The shooting sun arrow pierced through the chest of the first island nation person, then the second, the third, the fourth. The shooting sun arrow continued forward, as if there was no end to it. A series of island nation people fell to the ground. Seeing that, the others subconsciously retreated in fear. What kind of arrow was this? How could it be so terrifying? For an ordinary archer, it was already very powerful for an arrow to pierce through 2 people. However, this arrow seemed to have no time to exhaust its strength. It was unheard of, unseen, and too terrifying. Let's go. Tang Jing took advantage of the enemy's distraction and whispered, then took the lead and rushed out. With the shooting sun arrow paving this bloody path, it could be said to be unstoppable and unobstructed. No one could stop them. In an instant, they arrived at the last door of the imperial palace. After passing through this door, they would be able to disappear into the bustling streets. Even if the enemy wanted to chase after them, it would be extremely difficult. Hold on, it's the last step. Tang Jing encouraged. Wu nodded heavily, his eyes resolute. The Sky Emperor was truly in despair. He lived in the depths of the palace and never thought that he would be kidnapped. This was something that had never happened in thousands of years. This was a huge humiliation to the royal family. If it happened to him, he would probably have to commit suicide and use his death to apologize to his ancestors and citizens. The enemy finally knew that this was the last barrier. Although they were intimidated by the terrifying power of the shooting sun arrow, they still chased after them like a tide. Tang Jing had already picked up the shooting sun arrow and placed it back on the heaven-shocking bow. The tip of the arrow was aimed in one direction, and the people there would subconsciously scatter to the sides like a tide. It was obvious that even though they were determined to die, they would still feel an instinctive fear and tremble in the face of such a divine weapon. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. Seeing that there was still a group of people at the entrance who were unafraid of death, Tang Jing did not hesitate anymore, and the shooting sun arrow left the bow once again. Boom! After killing everyone, the shooting sun arrow struck the door. The thick and heavy pure wood door exploded into a pile of dust. The door had already disappeared without a trace, and the road ahead was unobstructed. Let's go. Tang Jing and the others immediately rushed out of the door. In front of them was a bustling street filled with traffic. Many people had already stopped to look at the imperial palace, not knowing what had happened. When they saw Tang Jing and the others rushing out, they all covered their mouths and cried out in alarm. These were all ordinary people, and were no longer a threat to Tang Jing. Naturally, he would not kill any more people, and was prepared to turn into the street beside him and disappear without a trace. But the heavens did not go as he wished. Chapter 668. F***CK, do you think that I can't do anything to you just because you're flying in the sky? Tang Jing spat out a mouthful of saliva and pulled back his bow, aiming at the shooting sun arrow. The people on the helicopter obviously didn't think that the arrows would be a threat to them and ignored them. The flames from the machine gun became even more intense, causing a cloud of dust to rise from the ground. Tang Jing didn't panic in the face of danger. Like a god, he wasn't affected by the series of bullets at all. Instead, his hands became even steadier. Whing! The shooting sun arrow left the bow, its speed faster than a bullet. In the blink of an eye, it rose into the air and accurately hit the fuel tank of the helicopter. Boom! With a huge explosion, the helicopter turned into a ball of flames. Little White kicked off Tang Zheng's shoulder like an arrow that shot into the sky. Not long after, it landed on Tang Zheng's shoulder. In the end, there was an additional shooting sun arrow. Tang Zheng patted its little head and praised, "Xiao Bai is so smart. We can't stay here for long, let's go." Seeing that the biggest threat had been eliminated, Marshall heaved a sigh of relief and urged, "Let's go." The two of them escorted the emperor and quickly turned into a nearby street, blending into the crowd and disappearing without a trace. The Kokyo was in chaos. Li Xiaotian stomped his feet in hatred. His perfect plan had gone down the drain. The next time he wanted to deal with Tang Jing, it would be even more difficult. "Marshall, this woman is really dead set on Tang Jing. She doesn't even want her own life. Moreover, he has people like Wu Junshan behind him. He will only become stronger in the future." Li Xiaotian shook his head. He felt that his future was not good. Making an enemy out of Tang Jing seemed to be a huge mistake. So what if it's a mistake? He is a cultivator, and cultivators are the natural enemies of martial artists. This is what the palace master taught me since I was young. How can I be like Marshall, going back on my words and going against my original oath and decision to mix with cultivators? Li Xiaotian's eyes were firm, not wavering in the slightest. No one would have thought that the one who hated cultivators the most would be the Li Palace, and not the martial organization that seemed to be incompatible with cultivators on the surface. This was one in the light and one in the dark. The layout was deep and far-sighted, causing others to be unable to fathom it. Asgard Mistress ordered me to come to the island. She only said that there was a very important matter. Could it be the matter of the martial monarch mountain that Tang Jing mentioned? Li Xiaotian muttered to himself, resisting the urge to call the Asgard Mistress. Since the palace master didn't want to tell her, there must be a reason for it. She wasn't stupid enough to ask. This was also why she was so surprised when she heard Wu Junshan mention Wu Junshan and the others. It was because she truly did not know about this matter. After Wu Junshan and the others left the martial sect, their whereabouts were very strange. Li Xiaotian was also curious and wanted to investigate, but there was very little information in this area. She wanted to do it, but she was powerless. But now, from the little clues, she gradually made her own judgment. Thinking of Wu Junshan, the dispirited look in her eyes gradually disappeared. Her eyes became bright, and her heart couldn't help but beat faster. Wu Junshan, if I really find him, or even catch him, it will definitely be a rich and colorful stroke in my life. In the Jianghu, the Li Palace's position will rise to another level, completely surpassing the martial organization, and even comparable to the mysterious Azure Dragon Hole. This thought made her palpitate with excitement. Not only would this benefit the Li Palace, it would also benefit her. Although she was the holy maiden of the Li Palace, and the future successor of the Li Palace master, she was still young. Without enough achievements and qualifications, even if she inherited the position of palace master in the future, it would be difficult to convince the masses. Without a doubt, the merit of capturing Wu Junshan would solve all her problems and shut the mouths of others. "You are the holy maiden of the Li Palace, Li Xiaotian." Suddenly, a voice broke her reverie. She unhappily raised her head and frowned at the person who came. This was a woman. To be exact, it was a beautiful woman, a woman who didn't lose to her. This wasn't just referring to appearance and temperament, but more importantly, strength. For a woman of similar age to her to have such strength, she could be said to be a dragon among men. "Who are you?" Li Xiaotian smiled, the displeasure and hostility in her heart quickly disappearing without a trace, replaced by a bewitching smile. The person who came was as stiff as a statue, rigidly saying, "The imperial tutor invites you." She didn't answer Li Xiaoqian's question, but the two words imperial tutor completely attracted Li Xiaoqian's attention, causing her to temporarily ignore this question. "You are from the imperial tutor's residence?" Li Xiaotian asked in surprise. The imperial tutor's residence was one of the most mysterious places in the island nation. Its degree of mystery far surpassed that of the imperial palace. In fact, the imperial palace was not mysterious to the masses, it was in the eyes of the masses. Even if outsiders couldn't enter the depths of the palace, it had been there for thousands of years, and the masses had accumulated a lot of understanding of it. On the other hand, the imperial tutor's residence was a name that the masses had never heard of, just like the three great organizations of Huaxia, which the average person had never heard of. The imperial tutor's residence was as mysterious as the Azure Dragon Palace. Everyone had only heard of its name, and no one had ever mentioned to outsiders what kind of existence it was. Those who could enter and leave the imperial tutor's residence were all tight-lipped, and there was even a saying that disaster came from the mouth. The Li Palace's intelligence network was spread all over the world, but even they knew a little about the imperial tutor's residence. But one thing was certain, the imperial tutor's residence was the imperial tutor's residence, the place where he trained his disciples and subordinates. It was one of the most dangerous places in the island nation, far more dangerous than the imperial palace. Since the imperial tutor invited her, Li Xiaotian naturally wouldn't refuse, and was even somewhat excited. She could finally touch upon this place that others couldn't understand. Of course, as the fearless holy maiden of the Li Palace, even though the imperial tutor's residence was very mysterious and the imperial tutor was very powerful, she still wouldn't feel any fear. Hearing Li Xiaotian's question, the person meticulously replied, "Yes." Li Xiaotian curled her lips and said, "Do you only know these few words?" The person acted as if she hadn't heard and turned to leave. "She has even more of a temper than I do." Li Xiaotian helplessly rolled her eyes, and then confidently followed. Before leaving the imperial palace, she couldn't help but turn her head to take a look. The imperial palace was still burning, but much of it had been extinguished. But under the thick smoke, the imperial palace was in a mess, almost completely destroyed. This ancient building that had stood for thousands of years had been destroyed in a single day by Tang Jing. What a troublemaker. First the warship, then the imperial palace. He really wants to turn this country upside down. The people of the island nation are probably on the verge of crying. Although she said this, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl into a smile. It was obvious that in the depths of her heart, she really didn't have a good impression of this country. On this point, she didn't lie to Tang Jing. Li Xiaotian was proud by nature, and this pride was also expressed in her attitude towards this small country. Although the island nation had no lack of experts, she believed from the bottom of her heart that the island nation was far inferior to Huaxia. Li Xiaotian wasn't wrong. The people of the island nation were indeed on the verge of crying. The Li Palace was a kind of belief in their hearts. With the Li Palace destroyed, their belief was on the verge of collapse. This kind of despair and grief was unimaginable. The whole country fell into deep pain, as if they had experienced a national disaster. The people walked onto the streets and gathered at the imperial palace, wanting to see what had become of the imperial palace. When they saw the mess of the imperial palace, many people knelt in front of the imperial palace and cried bitterly. They were sadder than if their parents had died. The internet was immediately filled with pictures of the imperial palace's current situation, which were transmitted to every corner of the world. The island nation had already announced to the outside world that this was a kind of crazy terrorist attack. The island nation would definitely carry out a fatal revenge attack against the initiator of this. The governments of various countries spoke out one after another to condemn this kind of terrorist act, but the people of many countries were secretly happy. 100 years ago, the island nation's invasion of the outside world had indeed attracted too much hatred for their own country. Some of their actions had even deviated from the values of the general public, such as the crazy actions of hunting whales every year. This time, the island nation had really lost face, and it had been completely disgraced. The people of the world saw it as a big joke. The people of the island nation marched on the streets, condemning the government's inaction. They wanted the people in power to step down, and they even apologized with death. The whole country gradually fell into chaos. However, all of this didn't end because, whether it was intentional or not, the government concealed the news of the emperor's abduction. The ordinary people only knew that the imperial palace had been destroyed. The government's plan was clear in the eyes of all the observant people. If the public knew that the emperor had been captured, it would cause even more turmoil and chaos. This was one of the things that the island nation government was most afraid of. The island nation government's wishful thinking was very good, but there was no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. A few days after the incident, the news of the emperor being abducted gradually appeared on the internet, and there was no trace of him. In the beginning, not many people believed this news. They thought that some people with ulterior motives wanted to stir up trouble and take advantage of the situation. However, to the public's surprise, the news quickly spread like wildfire. Not only on the internet, but also in real life. Moreover, the details of the incident were described in great detail, as if they had personally experienced it. If the other party was making it up, it definitely wouldn't be so realistic. Therefore, all of this could be true. This really caused an uproar. The people of the island nation went crazy. They rushed onto the streets and attacked the government. They wanted the government to give them an explanation, or let the emperor appear to give them an explanation. Then, this rumor would naturally collapse and disappear without a trace. However, things didn't develop as the people expected. Instead, it developed in a direction that they were very afraid of. The government dragged it out again and again, only comforting them. However, the emperor still didn't appear, causing the people to panic more and more. Gradually, everyone believed this matter. The emperor was really captured. This time, not only the island nation, but the whole world once again paid attention to this. This was the ruler of a country, the leader of a country, being captured in his own palace. This was simply a great humiliation. National disaster. This was a real national disaster. The people of the island nation didn't feel like their parents had died. Instead, it felt like their entire family had died. Many people had completely collapsed. They sat outside the ruins of the imperial palace all day long, like walking corpses. Chapter 669. The instigators of all of this, Tang Tangjing and Marshall, seemed to have disappeared without a trace. The island nation used all of its resources to find the three of them, but found that it was all in vain. The bustling Tokyo was a tourist paradise. Every year, it would receive a large number of tourists from all over the world. Due to historical reasons, the people of the Western Empire enjoyed treatment that citizens of other countries could not compare to in the island nation. At the entrance of a 5-star luxurious hotel, a Westerner swaggered into the hotel. The doorman respectfully greeted him. This was already a regular customer. He had been staying in the hotel for the past few days. Even the doorman remembered this face. The Westerner arrogantly nodded, as if he did not see the doorman's greeting. The doorman kept smiling as he watched the Westerner walk into the hotel. The Westerner sat in the electric hall and arrived at the luxurious suite on the upper floor. After the door opened, a face appeared behind the door. It was a Chinese face. If Li Xiaotian was here, he would definitely be unable to help but exclaim a name, Marshall. The person at the door was the Marshall that the island nation had racked their brains to find. It was as if Marshall had disappeared from the face of the earth. She actually swaggered into the most prosperous 5-star hotel in Tokyo. No one would have thought that she would be so bold, and no one would have expected that she would be able to escape layers upon layers of searches and surveillance. Of course, more people would be curious, how did she do it? Who was this Westerner? The Westerner asked, how is he? It was actually Hua Xia language, and it was very pure. Marshall nodded and said, just now, he was a little restless and wanted to escape. After I took care of him, he became obedient again. The Westerner sneered and said, he has already escaped so many times, but he still hasn't given up. After all, he is the emperor. His temperament is far more resolute than ordinary people. Marshall said. Fine, then let him escape. He will eventually despair. The Westerner shrugged indifferently and said. How is it outside? Marshall asked. The Westerner chuckled, it's getting more and more chaotic outside. I really didn't expect that this time, I would accidentally cause such a big mess. It's enough for the people of the island nation to drink a pot. Wu said meaningfully, it's not just a pot. I saw the reports on TV. This country is almost in chaos. This is just a facade. The island nation is not damaged at all. Given time, they will rise again. It's just like when they were bombed by the Western Empire's atomic bomb. The whole country mourned, but it didn't take them many years to rise again, even faster than the Hua Xia. There are many qualities in this nation that are worth learning and thinking about. The Westerner shook his head and sighed. After a short pause, he sighed. Hua Xia has a deep foundation and too many unique advantages. But because of this, they are often not good at cherishing and reflecting. So, in fact, there are many aspects of the island nation that we can learn from. Wu was obviously not interested in this question and changed the topic. What should we do next? We can't stay in the hotel forever, right? Of course not. The Westerner said mysteriously, during this period of time, I have been quietly observing the changes. Although the island nation is in chaos, our goal is to save your master and the others. So, the key is to find their whereabouts. According to the emperor, only the imperial advisor knows the whole story. But the result of my inquiries over the past few days is that there is no such person. Ordinary people don't even know of his existence. Wu was not surprised and said, in Huaxia, ordinary people are not aware of the existence of the three major organizations. This situation is similar in every country. The Westerner nodded and continued, the emperor is unwilling to speak. We also don't know where the imperial advisor is. So, all of this has temporarily reached a dead end. Don't you know the soul search technique? If we use the soul searching technique on him once, wouldn't everything be solved? Wu suggested. The Westerner shook his head and smiled bitterly, he is still useful to me. This method won't work for the time being. We can only think of another plan. After saying that, he lowered his head and pondered. Wu was helpless and silently walked away. He walked into a room and saw a person lying on the bed. He did not move at all, but his eyes kept rolling around. No one knew what he was thinking. This person was the emperor who had been abducted. Your acupuncture points have been sealed by me. Don't even think about escaping. Wu sat on a chair at the door and said coldly. Got it. Suddenly, the Westerner cried out in surprise and shot up from his chair with a whoosh. He stared straight at him and asked, what can we do? National Security Bureau. The Westerner snapped his fingers and said. National Security Bureau. Wu repeated curiously, what can the Dragon Group do to help? Don't you remember the island nation's royal family that I caught in the Chongbai Mountains? He is the emperor's younger brother and was later handed over to the National Security Bureau, Su Tian. The National Security Bureau's understanding of the island nation is not just a year or so. They definitely have a lot of information that I don't know. Perhaps the imperial advisor is one of them. Wu rolled his eyes and thought that it was feasible. He said, you are from the National Security Bureau, so you can try this method. But let me tell you, the emperor must not be handed over to the National Security Bureau. So, this Westerner was actually Tang Jing. He deliberately used an illusion technique to transform himself into a Westerner and swaggered into the hotel. No one would have thought that he had such a trick up his sleeve. He was right under the noses of the Japanese. He was truly a black sheep under the lamp. Even if I hand it over to them, they wouldn't dare to accept it. This is a hot potato. If the National Security Bureau were to accept it, it would be an act of the country. It would lead to international disputes and war. Tang Jing laughed loudly. Only then did Wu relax. The emperor was related to the safety of her master and the others. Even if it was a country, she would not easily give it up. Tang Jing took out a satellite phone from his sumra bag and dialed Su Yingtian's number. After a few rings, Su Yingtian's familiar voice rang out. "Who is it?" "Me." Tang Jing said a simple word. Su Yingtian immediately recognized his voice and said in surprise, "So it's you, brat. You slipped away again. Didn't I ask you to take care of Princess N? I told you to protect her safety, so why did you run away without saying a word? You didn't even say a word. Could it be that Princess N is really that terrifying that you want to avoid her?" Speaking of this mission, Su Yingtian was really depressed. Other people would fight to the death for this mission, but this brat wanted to hide far away. It was too abnormal. This made him, an old man in his 40s, unable to figure out what Tang Jing was thinking. How much danger can she be in the country? Moreover, with your secret protection, nothing will happen. Tang Jing explained. Su Yingtian chuckled and said, "Speaking of chaos, the island nation has been really exciting recently. You know that there's a big mess, right? Island nation has done so many bad things to me, Huaxia. A while ago, they even sent people to assassinate Princess Anne and frame our country. I don't know which fierce person it is, but if I meet him, I will definitely treat him to a few drinks and properly thank him." He didn't expect Su Yingtian to take the initiative to change the topic. Tang Jing said embarrassedly, "I came to find you today for this matter." "For this matter?" "Wait a minute, Tang Jing, where are you now?" Su Yingtian reacted, as if he had realized something, and asked nervously. "I'm in the island nation. F***ck. Su Yingtian couldn't help but curse. His breathing also couldn't help but quicken as he asked, "Don't tell me that fierce person is you." Tang Jing said embarrassedly, "You guessed right." Silence. Su Yingtian was completely silent. Only the sound of heavy breathing could be heard from the phone. Su Yingtian knew that Tang Jing's courage was big and his ability was not small, but he never would have thought that he would dare to single-handedly break into a country, destroy the imperial palace that had been passed down for thousands of years, and even kidnap the ruler of a country. There wasn't such a fierce person in the movies. Before Su Yingtian could react, Tang Jing dryly coughed and reminded him, "You are the director of the National Security Bureau. What kind of battle have you not seen? Why do you look like you haven't seen the world? F***ck. Su Yingtian cursed again and said angrily, "Do you think that the director of the National Security Bureau is omnipotent? As far as I know, there is an upper limit to the strength of the people I know, but you seem to have no upper limit. Every time you dare to do something shocking. Do you think that everyone's hearts are too strong, so you're deliberately testing everyone?" Su Yingtian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He really was someone who had seen great battles, but he couldn't withstand Tang Jing's frightening torment. Su Yingtian took a few deep breaths, suppressed the shock in his heart, and asked curiously, "How did the island nation provoke you this time? Why are you so fierce? This is a secret for now, but I can tell you one more thing. The sinking of the warship a while ago was also caused by me." Tang Jing simply told him everything at once. Hiss. Su Yingtian's gasp could be heard from the phone. "My heart can't take it. I don't want to talk to you anymore. You really want to scare me to death. Suing Tian patted his chest and said with lingering fear, do you know how serious the warship incident was a while ago? The island nation was certain that our Hua Xia was the one who did it. After all, the two countries are old enemies. Because of this, the two countries went to war. I didn't think that they wouldn't blame us. This was really done by our people. If the other side knew that you were from the National Security Bureau, then I'm afraid it would really cause a war between the two countries. Suing Tian rubbed his eyebrows. In the past, he was very lucky to have recruited Tang Jing, but now it seemed that this might not be a lucky thing. He was simply a ticking time bomb. He didn't know when it would explode, but it would implicate the National Security Bureau and even the entire country. Of course, this was only the worst-case scenario. Suing Tian and Tang Zhang's relationship was already unusual, so he wouldn't burn the bridge after crossing it. Suing Tian really had a headache. After a while, he said, is the emperor still in your hands? Of course, he's next door. Just now, he tried his best to escape, but we stopped him. Chapter 670. Suing Tian could not think of anyone who would be as daring as Tang Jing. Such a daring person was rarely seen in the world, treating all power and prestige as child's play. Marshal. Tang Jing replied. Suing Tian was slightly startled. A tall figure and a cold and beautiful face immediately appeared in his mind. So it's her. Although it was unexpected, everything was within his expectations. In this world, only Marshal would accompany Tang Jing in his unbridled madness. Alright, then let's talk about the reason for your call. Suing Tian took a deep breath and asked. What do you know about the island nation's imperial tutor? Tang Jing asked directly. Island nation's imperial tutor. Suing Tian's voice slightly changed. Why did you think of asking him? Tang Jing heard this and his heart moved. Since Suing Tian said this, it meant that he definitely knew something, so he said, I am looking for him to ask about an important matter. What is it? Suing Tian said. Since it was related to Martial Monarch Mountain, Tang Jing did not want to make it public, so he said, it's not convenient to say the specific reason, but this time, I want to ask you for a favor. At this point, Suing Tian cleverly chose not to ask any more questions and directly said, the imperial tutor is a special existence in the island nation, and this name has been passed down for a long time. It does not belong to any one person, but belongs to the imperial tutor manor. Every generation of the imperial tutor manor's master will inherit the title of imperial tutor. Of course, the imperial tutor is too mysterious. Most people, and even many martial artists, do not know of his existence. The imperial tutor manor and the imperial family complement each other. Many times, the imperial family has to humbly ask for advice or help from the imperial tutor manor. The imperial tutor manor does not take orders from the imperial family, so the two are on equal footing. Tang Jing was surprised. Suing Tian actually knew so much about the imperial tutor, especially the existence of the imperial tutor's residence. Tang Jing was very surprised. Island Nation actually had such a mysterious organization, just like the Azure Dragon Palace in Huaxia. Of course, there was a difference between the Imperial Advisor's residence and the Azure Dragon Palace. This was because there was no news of the Azure Dragon Palace influencing the political situation of the country. However, the Imperial Advisor's residence had such a strong influence on the royal family. Perhaps this was the result of the difference between the two countries' national conditions. Now that you've captured the Heavenly Emperor, the Imperial Advisor's residence will definitely not sit idly by. Suing Tian added. Tang Jing frowned and said, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to find the Imperial Advisor's residence, but they didn't respond at all. Now that the island nation is in such a big mess, the Imperial Advisor's residence didn't even let out a fart. The Imperial Advisor's residence is a hidden line, so of course they won't surface so easily. I dare to conclude that they are definitely looking for you everywhere. Suing Tian retorted. Tang Jing muttered to himself for a moment, then said, then wouldn't I have to purposely leak my whereabouts? Speaking of which, I really admire you. I really don't know how you escaped the other party's inescapable net. Suing Tian sighed. This kind of skill was simply heaven-defying. Even though he was experienced and knowledgeable, he never thought that Tang Jing would use illusion techniques to change his appearance and deceive the world. If you want the Imperial Advisor's residence to find you, then you must be fully prepared beforehand, because what awaits you will definitely be a fatal attack like a storm. Suing Tian warned. Understood. Tang Zheng understood clearly. Let me ask again, what is the Imperial Advisor's realm? Of course he is in the Master Realm. As for the level of the Master Realm, there is no accurate information on this, but one thing is certain, the Imperial Advisors of the past generations are the #1 masters of the island nation. Suing Tian said in a deep voice. Tang Zheng's head slightly sank, and he felt that this matter was getting more and more troublesome. However, even if it was troublesome, he still had to deal with it. He couldn't give up halfway. You don't want to say what is the reason for such a big mess, but I still want to tell you, take care of yourself. Where there is life, there is hope. Everything must be done with the premise of protecting your life. You have great potential for development, so you can't let anything happen to you in a foreign country. Suing Tian advised earnestly. Although Tang Jing had caused such a big disturbance, he still cared about him from the bottom of his heart. Thank you. Tang Jing could feel his sincerity. If my special identity brings any adverse effects to you or the country, you have to bear with it. Tang Jing knew very well that his identity was too special. He was a Hua Xia person, and also a member of the National Security Bureau, which meant that he had an official background. In the island nation, he had attacked the warship, kidnapped the emperor, and destroyed the imperial palace. No matter what it was shocking enough to make the island nation gnash their teeth. If the island nation investigated Hua Xia's officials, Hua Xia would indeed be in a passive situation. Suing Tian understood and said, don't worry, I am destined to deal with this kind of situation. Moreover, Hua Xia is no longer the weak Hua Xia of decades ago. Today, whoever wants to use force against Hua Xia will have to think twice before doing so. Hearing this, Tang Zheng was slightly relieved. Suddenly, he remembered something and said, Li Palace's holy maiden Li Xiaotian said that the island nation's emperor has a very serious hidden illness. This news is most likely true. Although I have caught the emperor, I have not found out what illness he has. His body is very healthy, even healthier than the average person. It is very strange. Suing Tian obviously did not know about this news. Hearing this, he was stunned for a moment and said, You are saying that the island nation's emperor has a hidden illness? I have never heard of this matter. Since you say it is true, I will immediately send people to investigate. If this information is handled properly, it will definitely be of great use. Suing Tian was pleasantly surprised and continued, but what does this have to do with Li Xiaotian? Li Xiaotian has come to the island nation. Moreover, there is something fishy between the Li Palace and the island nation's imperial family. You must be careful. Tang Jing also did not understand the relationship between the Li Palace and the island nation's imperial family. But for Li Xiaotian to appear here at this time, it was definitely not normal. Suing Tian's voice also became low as he said in a serious tone, Thank you for this news. The 3 large organizations have always been the main targets of the government. If they are really colluding with the island nation's imperial family to harm the country and its people, we will definitely not sit by and do nothing. This country cannot allow a few organizations to stir up trouble. Also, if you have any further information about the emperor's hidden illness, please immediately inform me. No problem. Tang Jing hung up the phone and walked in front of the emperor. The emperor's eyes were wide open as he stared straight at Tang Jing. It's useless for you to stare at me like this. I've always wanted to use you as bait to fish out the imperial tutor, but I didn't expect that we would hide too well, so he couldn't find us. Since that's the case, I'll take the initiative to appear and use you to fish out the big fish. Tang Jing said to the emperor. The emperor said hatefully, if you dare to have any ideas about the imperial tutor, you will definitely die. Hee, is that so? Then we'll wait and see. Tang Jing smiled mysteriously and left the room. Wu chased after him and asked in a low voice, what do you want to do? You guys continue to stay in the hotel. I'll take a look around the imperial palace and send them a message. The imperial tutor's mansion will definitely hear the news and move. Tang Zhang's eyes flashed with a bright light as he said mysteriously. Wu's heart skipped a beat. He had already guessed his method and warned, be careful, I'll wait for you to come back. Without a doubt, Tang Jing going to the imperial palace was a very dangerous action, especially his method. When he arrived outside the imperial palace and saw the combination of light and darkness, he understood that his decision was indeed very risky. However, he had to give it a try even if it was risky. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome for the enemy to not be able to find him. Looking at the messy Kokyo from afar, the corner of Tang Zhang's mouth curled up into a smile as he muttered to himself, back then, I wanted to burn it. My dream has come true. This scene is truly beautiful. After saying that, he swaggered towards the ruins of the imperial palace. When he walked out of the shadow of the street corner, his face had already undergone a tremendous change. He no longer had the face of a Westerner, but had instead returned to his original appearance. When he walked across the street and arrived in front of the ruins of the imperial palace, the people who were cleaning up the ruins did not notice him. However, Tang Jing already felt that he was being stared at by countless pairs of eyes in an instant. This was like a pack of wolves staring at their prey, and a sense of danger arose spontaneously. He walked in a circle in front of the ruins as if nothing had happened. Then, he turned a corner and walked toward another street. He immediately felt that someone was following him. He did not turn around and calmly strolled down the street. On the bustling street, pedestrians came and went, shuttling back and forth endlessly. Unknowingly, the number of pedestrians on both sides of the street gradually decreased. It turned out that many people had appeared out of nowhere and separated the pedestrians to the side. The area around Tang Jing became a vacuum. The number of pedestrians on the street also decreased as they were being cleared away. Tang Jing saw all of this, but he did not care at all and continued to do his own thing. Suddenly, a group of people walked towards Tang Jing in a fan-shaped formation. Their expressions were solemn, and there were even sparks of hatred flickering in their eyes. Tang Jing smiled faintly and whispered, "Are you finally going to make a move?" The two sides approached each other. Tang Jing was surrounded, and enemies were eyeing him covetously from all directions. Tang Jing stopped, crossed his arms, and said, "Who are the people from the Imperial Advisor's residence?" He believed that the people from the Imperial Advisor's residence must be mixed in with these people. The crowd was silent, and many of them even revealed looks of doubt. It was obvious that to them, the three words, Imperial Advisor's residence, were also very unfamiliar. Bring a message to the Imperial Advisor. If you want the Sky Emperor to live, then tell me the information I want. As for what information, he should be very clear about it. Otherwise, the situation will continue to worsen. Tang Zhang said indifferently. Still, no one answered. The atmosphere was oppressive and austere. All right, I'm done. I'm leaving. With that, the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrow appeared in Tang Zhang's hands. Buzz! An arrow flew out, causing the air to surge and blood to splatter everywhere. The people in front of him fell down one after another. Tang Jing shrunk the ground into an inch, followed closely behind the sun-shooting arrow, and quickly passed through the crowd. Before the others could gather, Tang Zheng had already rushed out of the encirclement. Chapter 671. Tang Zheng rushed out of the encirclement and left the crowd far behind. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the street, leaving behind a group of island nation people staring at each other helplessly. Tang Zheng had already changed his appearance and blended into the crowd. He walked towards the hotel without leaving a trace. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks and abruptly turned his head to look behind him. The crowd that was moving like shuttles were all unfamiliar faces, and there was nothing unusual about them. He frowned and muttered in his heart, "Why do I feel like someone is following me?" With his strength, he was still being silently followed by someone. That person's strength must be very terrifying. Just now, there was no one with a particularly high cultivation in that group. It was easy for me to get rid of them. Why do I feel like I'm being followed? It was precisely because he saw that although the enemy had a lot of people, their individual cultivation was not high. That was why he showed himself without any fear. He had never thought that his flawless plan would also have a mishap. Although he did not see the person following him, he believed in his intuition. He was definitely being followed. Since that was the case, he could not continue to go to the hotel. He quietly turned into another street. The feeling of being followed had not disappeared. 5 Because, I want to see who you are. Could it be the state preceptor? He immediately rejected this idea. If the other party was really the state preceptor, he would have already made his move. Why would he need to sneakily follow him? The pedestrians on both sides of the street gradually decreased. The streets became more and more remote. The buildings became lower and lower. The fox has finally revealed his tail. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed. Although he did not turn around, he could clearly feel that someone was following him. If not for his superior perception, he would definitely not feel the existence of this person. The other party was like air. Finally, Tang Zheng stopped and slowly turned around. The other party did not hide. Because this was a very spacious place. There was nowhere to hide. This person looked at Tang Zheng calmly. Their eyes met. No one moved. They just looked at each other quietly. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed with surprise. This was another woman, a beautiful woman. Moreover, the expression between her brows was extremely cold. "Are you from the Imperial Advisor's residence?" Tang Zheng broke the silence and asked. "Tang Zheng, you also know ninjutsu?" The other party didn't answer the question but said indifferently. Tang Zheng curled his lips in disdain and said, "Ninjutsu." As soon as he finished speaking, his face changed and returned to his original appearance. "Ninjutsu is just a small trick. Let me tell you, this is Hua Xiao's Genjutsu, the ancestor of your ninjutsu." Her face turned ashen as she said, "How dare you? Are all Huaxia people so arrogant?" Tang Zheng was so angry that he laughed. "You still have the nerve to say that we're arrogant and conceited? I think you're the frogs at the bottom of the well. You think you're the best in the world after learning a little bit of magic. The ignorant are fearless. If it was an ordinary person, they would certainly be in awe of the magic of ninjutsu. But Tang Zheng was a cultivator and had seen too many powerful magic. He knew that Hua Xiao's magic was extensive and profound. Island Nation's ninjutsu was not even worthy to carry the shoes of Hua Xiao's magic. Island Nation people were wishful thinking that ninjutsu was amazing and treated it as a treasure. In Tang Zheng's eyes, it was ridiculous. "You dare to insult ninjutsu? I promise you, you will see what real ninjutsu is, and in the end, you will die on this land." "Is that so? Then I'll wait and see." Tang Zheng shrugged and said disapprovingly. Immediately, the other party was driven mad with anger. "Since you're from the Imperial Advisor's residence, then you're not a nobody. Tell me your name." Otherwise, if you lose your life, you won't have this opportunity. The other party said, "Of course I'm not like you who hides the head and shows the tail. Remember, my name is Junko." Tang Jing faintly smiled and said, "Your name is quite good. As the saying goes, beautiful women are destined to have a short life." As his voice fell, Tang Jing walked towards Junko. Just a small step and he was already in front of Junko. Junko had seen this magical distance shrinking technique before, so she had been waiting for it and was secretly on guard. When Tang Jing raised his leg, she reacted. Her hands quickly formed a seal. Whoosh! The air shook and she unexpectedly disappeared in front of Tang Jing. Ha! Tang Jing could not help but exclaim. Although this Junko was young, she was not a fake. Her ninjutsu had actually reached such a level. However, this was not the first time that Tang Jing had seen this kind of ninjutsu. The emperor's younger brother also used this kind of ninjutsu and was finally defeated by Tang Jing. Junko's cultivation was even weaker than the emperor's younger brother. In front of Tang Jing, it was like Guan Yu playing with a knife. He did not even use war spirit. Instead, he used a pair of thin hands to cut the void in front of him. Whoosh! A strong wind blew and the air shook. Junko's figure appeared again. Tang Jing's hand had already reached her chest. She hurriedly blocked with both hands. Bang! Both of her hands were struck by Tang Jing's hand, causing her to fall back and fiercely hit her chest. Even her chest was flattened. Puff! She spat out a mouthful of blood. Her eyes flashed with shock and pain. With a muffled groan, she quickly retreated. Tang Jing stood with his hands behind his back. He did not continue to pursue. Instead, he calmly said, "You are not my opponent. If you continue to fight with me, you will die without a doubt. Even if you kill me, you can forget about making me surrender." Junko angrily stared at him and said with a sonorous voice, "Killing you is too easy. Since you have chased me, then I will let you pass a message to the Imperial Advisor's residence. Tell me the details of the warship bombarding the island. Perhaps the Emperor will have a chance to live. Otherwise, I don't mind letting the people of the island nation watch their Emperor disappear from this world." Junko's expression changed. "You are so unbridled. There will definitely be no good result. You will die miserably. You don't have to worry about this. Pass my message. I want to know the answer tomorrow. At that time, you will come here alone with the answer. If you dare to play any tricks, the consequences will be very serious." With that said, Tang Jing flashed backwards and disappeared from Junko's line of sight at lightning speed. Junko wanted to chase after him but stopped in her tracks. She knew that she was not his opponent. Previously, when she heard Li Xiaotian talking about this person's strength, she didn't believe it. But after seeing it with her own eyes, she understood the gap between them. She was known as the #1 genius of the island nation. Her master, the Imperial Advisor, once asserted that her achievements in the future would even surpass him. So, from childhood to adulthood, she wore the halo of a genius. Gradually, she adapted to everyone's eyes and the treatment of a genius. But now, she was defeated without any preparation. The halo of a genius instantly dimmed, and one could imagine her mood. She stood on the street and looked at the direction where Tang Jing disappeared in silence for a long time. After an unknown period of time, she leisurely turned around and strode away. There were green hills and clear waters. Next to a gurgling stream, there were houses in groups of 3 to 5. It looked like a small village. It was quiet and strange, giving a feeling of a paradise. Especially this place was located near Tokyo, which made it even more precious. But strangely, no stranger discovered this paradise. The people walking around nodded and greeted each other. Apparently, they were very familiar with this place. As soon as Junko stepped into this place, someone immediately stopped and respectfully saluted her. Junko returned the salute for the first time, which made everyone curious. In the past, when someone saluted her, she would proudly leave without showing any kindness. There must be a demon behind this. Everyone looked at Junko with suspicion. This genius of the Imperial Advisor's residence. Yes, this was the legendary and mysterious Imperial Advisor's residence. No one would have thought that the famous Imperial Advisor's residence would be an ancient village. It didn't have the majesty of an Imperial Advisor's residence. But the people walking around showed that this place was different. Everyone's footsteps were very brisk, like a gust of wind. Their movements were elegant, exuding a different kind of charm. Junko walked into the depths of the village. A moment later, she arrived in front of a wooden house. This wooden house was even smaller than the other houses. It was particularly inconspicuous, especially the holes in the wall, which made the wooden house look a bit dilapidated. When Junko approached the wooden door, she respectfully stopped. The various expressions on her face completely disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a tranquil tranquility. Imperial Advisor. Junko softly called in island nation language. The wooden door didn't respond, as if there was no one inside. After a long while, an old voice came from the wooden house. Junko, you are impetuous. Go to the sword forest and meditate for half a day. Junko didn't have the slightest dissatisfaction. She deeply bowed and said, yes. She turned and left the wooden house. The wooden house was the same as before. It didn't have the slightest domineering aura, but it made people deeply feel the difference. Junko strolled to the deepest part of the village. It was a bamboo forest, which was an extremely important place in the Imperial Advisor's residence. The sword forest was the place where the disciples of the Imperial Advisor's residence practiced their swordsmanship. But not everyone could come here to practice their swordsmanship. Ordinary disciples could only practice their swordsmanship mechanically by the stream over and over again. Only those who had reached the great Tao of swordsmanship were qualified to come here to practice their swordsmanship and comprehend the essence of swordsmanship. It was said that all the Imperial Advisors had comprehended the great Tao of swordsmanship in the sword forest. There were too many magical places in this bamboo forest. What one could obtain was entirely dependent on one's luck. It wasn't Junko's first time in the sword forest. The moment she stepped into the sword forest, although the scenery in all directions didn't change at all, her entire person had changed. Looking up, these green bamboos were no longer green bamboos. Instead, they had turned into long swords. The long swords stood in great numbers, giving people a sense of awe-inspiring mystery. Chapter 672. Junko's speed was very fast, like a bolt of lightning shuttling through the forest of swords, and the wind blew the bamboos. She didn't have a sword in her hand, but her fingers quickly formed a series of hand seals. Every time she formed a hand seal, the air would vibrate, as if there was a mysterious power contained within the hand seal. These hand seals were very important in ninjutsu, and they were the source of power. This was the experience accumulated by countless ancestors. As long as a hand seal was formed, the corresponding ninjutsu would be activated. This was very different from the magic of Huaxia. It was derived from the island nation after learning the basics of magic. When ninjutsu was practiced to the extreme, these hand seals didn't necessarily need to be formed with both hands. With a move of the mind, the ninjutsu would naturally be activated. This was much faster and more powerful than the hand seals he made. Junko's cultivation hadn't reached that level yet, but her fingers were flying and forming hand seals was very fast. These hand seals were kendo hand seals. Although there was no sword, a trace of sword energy had already spread in the air. All of a sudden, she stopped in her tracks and pushed her hands forward. Vast and mighty sword chi surged forward like an avalanche. Paw paw paw. Angle the bamboo bent backward and almost fell to the ground, but it didn't break. It seemed to be very resilient. As soon as the sword energy passed, the bamboo bounced back and pierced the sky. Kacha! The sound of silk tearing suddenly sounded, which was particularly eye-catching in this silent forest of swords. Junko's face changed slightly, and her eyes locked on a bamboo not far away. A crack appeared on the bamboo, and then the crack spread in all directions at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, the bamboo was full of cracks. Junko's eyes flashed with ecstasy and expectation, as if something good was about to happen. Whoosh! A breeze blew through the forest of swords, and the bamboo leaves rustled. As for the bamboo that was full of cracks, it broke into pieces and turned into powder that drifted in the air. In the blink of an eye, the bamboo that pierced the sky disappeared. Junko didn't move, and she stared at the smoke with a strange look in her eyes. The smoke dissipated, and a ray of light lit up. Junko's breathing became rapid, and without blinking, she walked step by step toward the light. Finally, this ray of light revealed its true appearance. It was a sword, green all over, and it was like a pool of autumn water, rippling with a mysterious aura. Junko stood in front of the sword and stared at it with burning eyes, muttering to herself, "The sword forest finally gave me a sword." The sword forest gave a sword. This was the dream of the imperial preceptor's disciples. Only when their cultivation reached a certain level would the sword forest give a sword. This was an independent behavior of the sword forest, and even the imperial preceptor couldn't change it. From this point, one could also see the magic of the forest. Junko's hands trembled as she reached out and grabbed the hilt. She subconsciously closed her eyes, as if she was carefully perceiving the sword. Clang! The long sword was lifted up high by Junko. The setting sun sprinkled down from the sky, and the mottled light reflected off the sword, rippling with a mysterious and powerful aura. Junko sighed in her heart. She had been cultivating for so long and had been looking forward to this day, but she hadn't had a breakthrough. She didn't expect to gain so much after fighting with Tangjing this time. She couldn't help but think of that delicate face. With a complicated expression, she sighed, "Should I thank him?" Humph. In the next second, she rejected this ridiculous idea. This was her own contribution over a long period of time. What did it have to do with that person? Since her cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds and the sword forest had given her a sword, the next time she met Tangjing, the outcome would be uncertain. She was full of confidence and excitement. She took a deep look at the sword forest, and strode out of the forest. While strolling in the village, pairs of surprised eyes were fixed on the long sword in her hand. Many people reacted, and their eyes were filled with envy. Junko walked in front of the crowd with a calm expression. Suddenly, a person walked in front of her and blocked her way. Li Xiaotian looked at Junko with a complicated expression and said, "Is the sword forest really so magical? Your cultivation has improved greatly after going in." Junko looked at her indifferently and didn't say a word. "I really want to go to your sword forest and experience it once," Li Xiaotian said enviously. Junko's expression turned cold, and she warned, "The sword forest is an important place in the imperial preceptor's residence. Unauthorized people are not allowed to enter, let alone an outsider like you. If you dare to have any ideas about the sword forest, I advise you to give up." Junko was very curious about Li Xiaotian. Back then, the imperial preceptor asked her to bring Li Xiaotian back. The two of them talked for a long time behind closed doors, and even Junko didn't know what they talked about. This added a mysterious aura to Li Xiaotian's body. In the past few days, Li Xiaotian had been staying in the village like a transcendent existence. It was unknown why she continued to stay here. Junko instinctively resisted Li Xiaotian. Perhaps it was because they were both women, especially beautiful women, and they didn't get along well with each other. However, due to the Imperial Preceptor's orders, she didn't dare to do anything to Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian didn't care about Junko's warning. Instead, she looked at the sword forest from afar, and her eyes kept changing. No one knew what she was thinking. Have you found Tang Zheng? Li Xiaotian retracted her gaze and asked. Junko hesitated for a moment and said, he showed up today. Li Xiaotian raised his eyebrows and said, oh, then he should be the one who showed up on his own, and not you who found him, right? Junko's eyes flashed with a strange color. Li Xiaotian had guessed correctly. Li Xiaotian wasn't surprised at all and said with a smile, Tang Zheng is very cunning. If he really wants to hide, I'm afraid there aren't many people in this world who can find him. However, I don't think he can hide forever. If he has a request, then of course he will have to show up. Junko stared straight at Li Xiaotian and asked, you know his purpose? Of course, he has the emperor in his hands. Of course you won't refuse to use the emperor's life in exchange for the truth of the island incident. Li Xiaotian said. Junko couldn't laugh anymore. She coldly snorted and turned to walk toward the cabin. Li Xiaotian chuckled twice and followed closely behind him. What are you doing? Junko stopped in front of the cabin and stared at Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian didn't move and said with a smile, I want to see the Imperial Preceptor, so of course I have to come here. Do you think you can see the Imperial Preceptor as you wish? Junko angrily said. Even the Emperor couldn't see the Imperial Preceptor as he wished. What ability did this outsider have to say that he wanted to see the Imperial Preceptor? Did he think this was his family's land? Li Xiaotian didn't get angry and lightly said, the Imperial Preceptor has the final say. Your words can't make the decision. After that, he pushed the wooden door. Junko wanted to stop him, but an old voice jumped out from the crack of the door, Junko, invite the guest in. Junko's movement immediately froze. Her face slightly changed and she had to stop her attack. Squeak. The wooden door automatically opened. Li Xiaotian walked in and the light immediately dimmed. Only the faint light outside the window and outside the door shone into the cabin, allowing people to vaguely recognize the surrounding environment. Although it was the second time he came in, Li Xiaotian still felt his heart being fiercely squeezed and a sense of suffocation hit him in the face. This wooden house wasn't very big, especially after seeing the situation inside. He felt that the wooden house was very small. There was very little furniture in the cabin. There was only a table and a bed. It was very simple. Of course, there was a reason for this. It was because there wasn't enough space in the cabin. Most of the cabin was occupied by a large pit. There was a large pit in the middle of the cabin. It was filled with swords, like a pool of swords. This large pit was the sword pool. It was a relic left behind by the Imperial Preceptor. It was another important place in the Imperial Preceptor's residence besides the sword forest. However, the sword pool was guarded by the Imperial Preceptor. No one was allowed to approach it without permission. Li Xiaotian couldn't help but look at the sword pool. Even though he had seen it once, when he saw it again, he still felt a kind of austere aura coming from it. This sword pool was very famous, even more famous than the sword forest. It was because of the masters of these swords. The masters of these swords were all experts of their generation, especially sword experts. These people came to challenge the master of the Imperial Preceptor's residence, the Imperial Preceptor. However, time after time, it was proven that their challenge was ridiculous and laughable. Compared to the Imperial Preceptor, they couldn't withstand a single blow and were not worth mentioning. It was precisely because they lost to the Imperial Preceptor that their swords were left in the sword pool. After accumulating for a long time, the sword pool became what it was today. Junko followed Li Xiaotian's gaze and looked at the sword pool. She snorted coldly as if to remind Li Xiaotian not to let his imagination run wild. Of course, there were many precious divine weapons in the sword pool. Even after so many years, the quality and power of these weapons were definitely not bad. It was a coincidence for an ordinary person to obtain a divine weapon. However, there were so many divine weapons that were covered in dust. It couldn't help but sigh. If one could take away one of the swords, its power would definitely increase greatly after leaving the sword pool. However, the Imperial Preceptor's residents had never done so. They had always kept the sword pool as a place for their disciples to visit. Li Xiaotian shifted his gaze slightly and looked at the darkness behind the sword pool. In the darkness, a person was quietly sitting cross-legged. His face couldn't be seen clearly, but he seemed to be very thin and small. He sat quietly on the chair with his head lowered. Li Xiaotian already knew that this person was the famous Imperial Preceptor. He didn't dare to be the slightest bit arrogant and cupped his hands in greeting. Chapter 673. State Teacher's words of congratulations made Junko ecstatic. She quickly bowed and said, "Everything is thanks to State Teacher." State Teacher shook his head and said, "This is the result of your hard work and luck. This sword is like autumn water. Why don't you call it autumn water sword?" Junko excitedly said, "Thank you State Teacher for the name." She subconsciously stroked the sword. "From now on this sword will be called autumn water." State Teacher nodded with gratification. Then he turned to Li Xiaotian and asked, "Miss Xiaotian, why are you looking for me?" "State Teacher, I heard from Junko that she found Tang Zhang's whereabouts. So I came to inquire," Li Xiaotian said. The Imperial Tutor looked at Junko without batting an eyelid. Junko understood and said, reporting to the Imperial Tutor, "Tang Zhang took the initiative to appear outside the Imperial residence. We couldn't capture him. He is a cultivator. His cultivation is high. How could he be captured alive so easily?" The Imperial Tutor said dismissively. "Since he has appeared, there must be something else. State Teacher has a divine foresight. He asked me to pass a few words to you," Junko said while looking at Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian was unmoved. He didn't have any intention to avoid suspicion. Instead, he waited for her to speak with interest. Seeing that the State Preceptor had no objection, Junko suppressed the displeasure in her heart and truthfully repeated Tang Zhang's words. State Teacher heard this but didn't get angry. Instead, he looked at Li Xiaotian and said, "This person really hasn't given up. He wants to know the answer to the island. Actually, I also want to know the answer," Li Xiaotian said with a smile. State Teacher chuckled and said, "The inside story of this matter is too complicated. It's better to know less." Li Xiaotian was unmoved and calmly said, "I am a very curious person. I want to know more." Is that so?" State Teacher gave a meaningful laugh. Suddenly, his tone changed as he said, "I can tell you the truth. The people on that island have all been imprisoned." Imprisoned? Li Xiaotian's expression changed greatly. Since Wu Junshan and the others were living on the island, they must be extremely powerful, even terrifying. Who in this world could imprison them? Li Xiaotian felt that all of this was inconceivable. If it was someone else who said this, she would definitely think that it was a fantasy story and that the other party was lying to her. However, since it came from the Grand Tutor's mouth, there was no doubt about it. Yes, those people are a huge threat, not only to the island nation, but also to the martial artists of Huaxia, so someone told me this news, and then I thought of a way to imprison them," the Imperial Advisor said lightly. Li Xiaotian's face stiffened. He seemed to have thought of a possibility and asked tentatively, "Who told you this news?" "Then who told you to come to the island nation?" State Teacher didn't answer and asked back. Li Xiaotian was startled and blurted out, "Palace Master." State Teacher chuckled and didn't say anything else. Li Xiaotian was shocked. She didn't expect that all of this was controlled by the palace master, especially the whereabouts of Wu Junshan and the others. Even she didn't know about it, but the palace master knew about it and even hid it from her. This feeling of not being trusted made her very uncomfortable. Of course, she didn't doubt the authenticity of state teacher's words because the palace master didn't give her any specific orders. He only said that when the time was right, she would naturally know everything. Now that the time was right, she actually learned this news from an outsider. A feeling of being deceived arose spontaneously. Junko looked at state teacher and Li Xiaotian with mixed feelings. She didn't know the information conveyed by these words. She didn't know what state teacher was hiding from her. Of course, she didn't have the slightest anger or resentment because state teacher's image in her mind was too high and couldn't be questioned. Since he didn't say it, there must be a reason. She only needed to silently watch. Why did the palace master tell you this news? After pondering for a long time, Li Xiaotian asked. Maybe she thinks her strength is not enough to deal with those people. Nonsense. Li Xiaotian shouted. His anger gradually replaced his reverence for the imperial preceptor. Junko heard this and flew into a rage. She stood in front of Li Xiaotian and glared at him. Don't be rude to state teacher. Li Xiaotian snorted and was about to fly into a rage when state teacher said, Junko, don't worry. Miss Li, your palace master is farsighted. She told me this news. Of course, there must be a deep meaning. As for what I said just now, only I have the strength to deal with those people. It's not an arrogant statement. Because the facts are the best proof. Li Xiaotian took a few deep breaths. There were more and more questions in his mind, as if they were about to rush out from the top of his head. Why did the palace master do all this? Why did she ask others to do it? Was it really like state teacher said, only he had the strength to deal with Wu Junshan and the others quietly? But she really couldn't see how state teacher was more powerful than Wu Junshan or the palace master. State teacher must be a grandmaster. As for the level of grandmaster, Li Xiaotian certainly couldn't see, but he couldn't be so powerful that he could easily imprison Wu Junshan and the others. In short, all of this was too strange. Then where did you imprison those people? Li Xiaotian asked unwillingly. State teacher smiled mysteriously and said, you don't need to worry about that. But Tang Zhang has given an ultimatum. If you don't tell him what happened on the island, or even let those people go, the emperor will die. This kind of loss is difficult to make up for your country. State teacher laughed out loud. He wants to threaten me. I'm really curious how far he can go in the end. As he said this, state teacher silently thought in his heart, Tang Zhang is a cultivator. Just this identity alone is enough for me to capture him. He has hidden secrets that need to be unearthed. You don't want to care about the life and death of the emperor anymore. Hearing state teacher's answer, Li Xiaotian's heart was filled with doubts and asked. State teacher laughed mysteriously, but didn't answer this question. Seeing that he couldn't get any useful information, Li Xiaotian could only helplessly say, if there is any news, please let me know. With that, he turned around and walked out of the small wooden house. Looking at the gradually darkening sky, her heart was in a mess. Why did the palace master do all this? Why did he ask her to come to the island nation at this time? Was it really to treat the emperor's illness? There were too many doubts and mysteries in this. She walked in the darkness with 1 foot and 1 foot, her head in a mess. Unknowingly, she actually came to the side of the sword forest. She stopped in her tracks and raised her head to look at the dark and deep sword forest. It was as if many towering swords were erected in front of her, and a murderous aura rushed towards her. Is the sword forest really as powerful as the legends say? She had heard too many legends about the sword forest in the past few days. Although she didn't practice swordsmanship, she knew a little about it. Many of the state teacher's residence's predecessors had comprehended swordsmanship from the sword forest. This definitely showed that the sword forest was not just powerful and mysterious. The state teacher's residence is full of mysteries, and it's not a good idea for me to stay here aimlessly. Why don't I explore the sword forest and see if I can find anything? She immediately did as she thought, and her eyes immediately became determined. Although the state teacher's residence had repeatedly ordered that outsiders were not allowed to enter the sword forest, the prideful her didn't take this order to heart. Moreover, her curiosity towards the state teacher's residence had increased greatly. It was necessary for her to find out something. When she first met the state teacher, the two of them had a long private conversation. Outsiders didn't know the content of their conversation, but in fact, there weren't many secrets that couldn't be revealed. However, there was one thing that Li Xiaotian could confirm from the conversation with the state teacher, that the palace master and the state teacher were old acquaintances. Their friendship seemed to be quite deep. Although Li Xiaotian was still a little brooding about this matter, he didn't show it. In fact, Li Xiaotian looked down on people from the island nation. This time, he was acting under orders, so he was so close to people from the island nation. However, she really didn't understand why Palace Master White, who had a high status and amazing strength, wanted to mix with the state teacher of the island nation. Humph, since you don't want to tell me the answer directly, I'll find it myself. I'll start with the sword forest and dig out the secrets of the state teacher's residence. Li Xiaotian was determined and strode into the sword forest. The sword forest was pitch black, but there wasn't a trace of mosquitoes or frogs. It was eerily silent. Li Xiaotian walked in with a calm expression and began to wander in the sword forest. The bright moonlight sprinkled down. There was a faint light in the sword forest, so it wasn't dark. The sword forest wasn't big. Li Xiaotian wandered around for more than 10 minutes, but he didn't find any clues. The sword forest was no different from an ordinary bamboo forest, but why did it become an important place of the state teacher's residence? The state teacher's residence had been passed down for so many years. How could they treat a useless bamboo forest as a treasure? This meant that the sword forest was definitely not as simple as it looked. She wandered around 2 more times unwillingly, but still found nothing. She was almost in despair. Maybe it's thanks to the state teacher's disciple that I had the opportunity to comprehend the swordsmanship. She shook her head helplessly and walked out of the sword forest dejectedly. After walking for a while, she found that there were still towering bamboos in all directions. The path she came from had disappeared. Ha! She didn't panic. Instead, she looked around with interest. There were identical bamboos all around her. There was no sense of direction or specific road signs. I'm lost. But I didn't realize how big the sword forest was. How could I be lost? She muttered unwillingly. She was never one to admit defeat easily. Since she was lost, she would find another way. If these bamboos were in her way, she didn't mind chopping down the bamboos to clear a path. There's something strange about the sword forest. She stopped in her tracks. She knew that running around like a headless fly would definitely cause problems. She looked into the distance, and all she could see were tall green bamboos.